Good evening, everyone. If you're able, can I ask that you remain standing while my chaplain, Canon Andrew Holliday, offers prayers for the meeting.
As we're still at the close of a working day, but the beginning of this meeting, we pray for God's blessing upon the decisions and the discussion. We pray also for the significance of moments in the history of our nation and world. And as we remember the 80th anniversary of Auschwitz being liberated, we remember all who were persecuted, and even in our own generation are persecuted for what they believe and what they stand for. As we pray for this council this evening, we pray for our chief executive, for her staff teams and all who make this council work so efficiently and wonderfully for the borough. And we give thanks that we're able to represent the peoples that we represent. And in the representation, it may be to God's glory as we serve one another in love and in charity, in peace and love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please be seated. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to run through the housekeeping for tonight's business. We're not expecting a fire drill, therefore if the alarm does sound, please follow officers who will lead you to the nearest fire exit, where we'll gather at the assembly point, which is on Believe Square. Officers will assist members of the public who are in the public gallery. Can I remind members of the need to respect each other, and I will continue to chair these meetings fairly and show impartiality. Members of the public are welcome, but should be aware that they should not interrupt or disrupt the proceedings. Disruption may result in removal from the public gallery or an adjournment of the meeting, in accordance with Rules 18 and 19 of the Council's Rules of Procedure in the Constitution. The rules of conduct for the meeting have been circulated to members in advance of this meeting. Then we move to the agenda. Item number 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have apologies from Councillor Anderton, Councillor Davis, Councillor Fish, Councillor Hodgkinson, Councillor Marshall, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor C. Morgan, Councillor M. Morgan, Councillor Reedy, Councillor Tebbott and Councillor Walker. Do we have any further apologies this evening, members? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of November 2024. I will move the acceptance of the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of November as a correct record. Leader, do you wish to second?
Wish to second, Madam Mayor.
Can I put the minutes to the vote, please? All those in favour of accepting the minutes? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The minutes of the meeting are. Item number 3, Mayor's announcements. A, the New Year's Honours List for 2025. On behalf of the Council, I would like to offer congratulations to Professor Sanjay Arya for being awarded an OBE for services to black and minority ethnic doctors and healthcare in the northwest of England. And also to Keely Hodgkinson on being awarded an MBE for services to sport. And I, as Mayor and Secretary, have sent letters of congratulations to all of those on behalf of everyone here at the Council. BBC Sports Personality of the Year Awards. I would also like to congratulate the borough representatives recognised in the BBC Sports Personality of the Year Awards just before Christmas. Olympic champion Keely Hodgkinson won the main prize, an amazing and well-deserved achievement for Keely. Wigan Warriors were awarded the title Team of the Year, and Jenny Meadows and Trevor Painter, who coach Keely, were named as Coaches of the Year. Well done to everyone involved, and I think Wigan is very proud of all of them. Item C, the Mayor's Ball. I would like to remind members that tickets are available for the Mayor's Charity Ball, which will take place at Killay Court on Saturday the 26th of April. The event will start at 7 p.m. Please contact either myself or the Charity Committee if you would like a ticket. All monies raised will support my charities, Wigan and Lee Hospice and Talk First. Your support for the ball, the charities, would be very much appreciated, and I would really love to see as many of you as possible at the ball. Holocaust Memorial Day. I would like to take this opportunity to invite members to Holocaust Memorial Day, the 80th commemoration events being held across the borough later this month. There will be 2 events taking place next Monday the 27th, the first one being held in Lee Town Hall at 11 a.m. and the second one at Wigan Town Hall at 2 a.m. And I just urge as many of you to come as possible. I've been to a service today in Manchester. It's a really important event for the 80th anniversary. Back to the agenda, item 4, declarations of interest. The monitoring officer has provided advice to all members and relevant guidance has been issued. Members are asked to consider relevant interests for the purpose of this meeting, and if there are any interests declared, members must leave the room during the relevant item. Please fill out the form on your agenda and return it to one of the Democratic Services officers at the end of this meeting. Item number 5, update from Cabinet portfolio holders. I now invite the relevant Cabinet portfolio holders to deliver their updates. Councillor Gambles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. I will be brief because there's quite a few papers after this which has got my name on. So I'll just be quick. I just wanted to give you a bit of an update on the winter pressures. I talked about it at the last meeting. Just to say that we had to obviously action that because of the cold weather snap that we had. So we made sure that there was no one sleeping out rough under those 0 degrees temperatures. Our outreach team, the police, our communities, councillors, members of the public are actually allowed us to find people who were needing support. And I'm pleased to say with help with the brick and everything else, we've actually managed to have a bed for the night, and everybody has actually been safe and warm during that cold winter snap. And obviously we continue to work in with those individuals. There were individuals and couples actually that we've been able to support in that. So that's just really giving you a quick update on that. And also the weather played its part, the ice and cold. I think we've all probably had frozen pipes, boilers not working, hot water gone. I certainly have. I've no hot water. But anyway, so some of the things that's happened there is that the contractors actually went into overtime. They actually extended their hours. They made contact with us as council, saying that we're overwhelmed. Can you bring any support? Quite a lot of our officers went out during that period of time, making sure they could support them. And we also got some additional support from other contractors in order to try and mitigate that. So there's been a lot of work that's happening there. One of the other things I should have mentioned when I've mentioned about the homelessness, and I always like a prop, as you know, I always have a prop somewhere about my person. This is actually called Real Change. What I am going to do, with your permission, I'm going to write to you all. This is actually a Wigan Lee initiative, and it's called Real Change, and it's basically, there's a QR code on the back, and you're actually able to donate money, and it goes for the homelessness in this borough, so it stays within the borough. So I'm going to see if anybody's willing to take some of those and take them along to your surgeries, and see if or your family, your friends, or anybody else like that could actually use that QR code. So I will be writing out to you about that. Good news is as well, lucky 7 million now we've got in the initiative of the Here For You, and it's 7,430 and 45p. So we always put the pence in because that's so important. So that is amazing. And with the feedback we're getting from that, from people, word of mouth, everybody's actually coming in. There will be 20 more drop-in sessions in February. People will be notified, but people can also just call in. I'll be circulating that list once we've actually got everybody agreed. There's a few dates and places that we just need to sign up first. But it just leaves me to say, can I just thank all of the teams that have been involved in all of those three little bits that I've just quickly gone through. And no doubt we'll pick up some more of the things that I'm talking about in the papers. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, in light of the recent flooding experienced across the borough, I felt that a quick overview of the actions taken by Wigan Council to date would be in order. In total, I understand that we have had 224 properties across the borough which experienced flooding, which is more than during the Storm Eva event back in 2015. The main areas affected included Platt Bridge, Bickershaw, where a critical incident was declared, Ashton and Makerfield, Lee, adjacent to Lilford Park. A number of residents are, to my knowledge, still in council temporary accommodation, including provision at local hotels. On the day, 2 rest centres were activated, one at Robin Park Leisure Centre and the other at Ashton Leisure Centre. Due to previous flooding events, some of those houses affected had no insurance. Some of those individuals who are now in council provided temporary accommodation. Many properties on that particular occasion lost their electricity supply, but over the preceding days, 2 to 3 days, supplies were restored. Madam Mayor, as is right and proper, the council is still continuing to support those residents affected by way of direct financial support, by linking residents with other organisations such as the BRIC. We have distributed information packs to all affected properties, and regular comms have been sent to ward members and regular updates via social media channels. We have also provided up-to-date 200 skips. That's up £300 per skip. We've provided 200 skips so residents can dispose of flood-damaged goods. Properties in Walthew Lane and Templeton Road, or Drive, I'm not sure on that one, Templeton Road, Platt Bridge, have been provided with dehumidifiers. All street gullies have been cleaned out and streets have been cleaned and disinfected. Replacement domestic bins have been provided, and we have also deployed staff into these areas to help and support residents. In addition, for those families who are in temporary accommodation, council tax has been suspended, and similar for the affected businesses. Business rates have also been suspended until the end of January. As you would expect here in Wigan, there have been many, many heartwarming examples of community spirit and donations made to families. I understand that St. Nathaniel's Church and the BRIC have been absolutely brilliant in their efforts. Our ongoing priorities are to continue to support residents with no insurance to get their homes into a good condition so that they can return back to them as soon as possible, and who at this moment in time are in temporary accommodation at the council's expense. As the lead flood authority, we are working with the Environment Agency to produce a Section 19 report which will detail, where possible, the cause of the floods and any other future mitigations and recommendations. Madam Mayor, this document is a public document and holds all agencies to account. To expedite the process, we have engaged a consultant who is already on site as an independent body to prepare the Section 90 report on behalf of this council. Amongst other actions we are continuing to take, we are seeking funding from the Forever Greater Manchester Fund to support those residents affected by the flooding event. Madam Mayor, I offer my personal thanks and gratitude to everyone who's been involved in this magnificent effort, all staff, elected members and our partners. But it goes without saying that, once again, Team Wigan have yet again been absolutely brilliant in its response to this emergency. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Prescott. Leader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And mine is slightly different, really, in terms of my update, because you touched on it in your opening remarks, the success that the borough's athletes and trainers and teams had at the Sports Personality of the Year. So I'm just going to reiterate something, because I thought this was special. When you start to think of us as a place, as a borough, to have such success in a national competition and win all the trophies that we have won, and then to get the recognition in Sports Personality of the Year. In 2013, in my role as Deputy Leader at the time, I did write to the head of BBC Sport, suggesting that in future, Sports Personality of the Year perhaps should be in Wigan. Well, I'm going to emphasise that again. I think certainly I'm going to write to the head of BBC Sport again, suggest that next year's Sports Personality of the Year is held in the borough, and we can honestly hope that the people that we're winning trophies won't have to travel as far, because it will be right in the doorstep. Our success is there for everyone to see in terms of our sports personalities. And certainly it's something that I'm proud of, and I know the people of this borough are proud of. And can I thank everybody, and I'm sure Keely did when she received it, everyone from this borough who voted for Keely on the night to win that Sports Personality of the Year. And the only thing I've got to check is whether anywhere along the line Luke Littler has any connections with the borough, because I'm sure he may have. Secondly, Madam Mayor, and it's something that I reiterated back in April last year, in terms of our continued support for WASPI. And I do know there's a question been put tonight to ask the same thing. Can I just assure everybody in this council chamber that this council will continue its support for the WASPI women, certainly from this borough, to continue that fight for the justice they deserve. And I'm not backing away from that, and neither we should as a council. So, Madam Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Leader. We'll move on to item 6A on the agenda, the appointment of interim Section 151 officer. And following her recent appointment to the post of Director, Finance and Legal, and in accordance with Section 151 of the Local Government Act 1972, the Council is recommended to confirm Sarah Johnson's appointment as Section 151 officer for the Council. Part 3, Section 6.4 of the Council's Constitution states that Director, Finance and Legal will hold the Section 151 officer position. She will take up the post on the 3rd of February 2025. The Council is also recommended to confirm John MacDonald's interim appointment as the Section 151 officer for the Council for the period of 24th of December 2024 to the 3rd of February 2025. I invite the leader to move the recommendations.
Happy to move, Madam Mayor.
Are the recommendations seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cunliffe, do you wish to speak now?
Happy not to have to. Thank you.
Do any other members wish to contribute? No. Leader, do you wish to sum up? So we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations, please show your hands. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Item 6B, Membership of Outside Bodies Report. The Council is requested to consider the report on page 19 of your agenda, advising the Council of a change in the political balance of opposition groups following the formation of the Community Independence Alliance Group. This has resulted in a change in the opposition membership on the Housing Advisory Panel. The membership requirement for the Housing Advisory Panel is 4 places to the majority group and 1 place to the majority opposition group. As such, the nomination for this seat from the majority opposition group is Councillor O'Byrne. No other groups can nominate to this position. I invite the leader to move the recommendations.
Pleasure to move, Madam Mayor.
Is the recommendation seconded?
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cunliffe, do you wish to speak? Do any other members wish to contribute? Leader, do you wish to sum up? So we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations, please show your hands. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that vote is carried. Item 6C, the Local Authority Governor Report. The Council is requested to approve the nominations for the Local Authority Governor vacancies and reappointments as set out in the report on page 25 of the agenda. I invite Councillor Bullen to move the recommendations.
Beg to move the recommendations, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are the recommendations seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Do you wish to speak? Do any members wish to contribute? Councillor Bullen, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you.
So again, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report, please show your hands. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is also carried. Item 6D, Town Charters. The Council is requested to consider the report on page 31 of the agenda. The report was discussed at Cabinet at its meeting on the 19th of December, following a motion to Council by Councillor Gerard in July last year. I invite the leader to move the recommendation.
Happy to move, Madam Mayor.
Are the recommendations seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Do you wish to speak, Councillor Cunliffe?
No, thank you.
Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this, and I'm glad to see another motion come back to the Chamber, even though we didn't have the chance to debate it last time. Progress with Unity. A report brimming with positive initiatives, and I commend the Council's commitment to community engagement. The much fabled plans for Atherton are looking like they may come to fruition, but only maybe in 2026. I hope I can see that a little bit earlier. But however, when I see the word more at the end of 2.10, I can't help but think that there's two more words missing, which is major investment in Atherton at the end of the paragraph. And I do fear it may just get kicked down the road again, but the report is good. The Admiral link to the local plan, all demonstrating a forward-thinking approach. The investment in Ashton is a welcome step, obviously, for Ashton. And the Our Town programme, too, deserves recognition for what it's achieved in the past. These are tangible demonstrations of the Council's commitment to improving our town centres, I hope. And I also fully appreciate the two core missions in the report, creating fair opportunities and flourishing town centres so they can provide a framework for progress. However, while I wholeheartedly welcome the report's strengths, I must express a concern about its potential for uneven impact. Acknowledging progress with Unity must mean progress for all towns and their neighbourhoods, not just Wigan, Lee and Ashton. The motion I submitted calling for a town charter for each district centre aimed precisely at addressing this. The report highlights the importance of community engagement. A town charter provides a powerful mechanism for deepening that engagement. It's not just about listening to our communities, but actively responding to their individual needs. Crafting tailored solutions fit for the unique characteristics of each town centre, having dedicated local discussions for tailored action, and for the unique opportunities in each of our historic towns. What's missing from the Progress with Unity plan is the nuanced approach that each separate charter would allow. The examples in the report show a real potential, and I'm glad of that. But imagine a system where each town can have its own unique plan. I know Atherton's having its own local plan for 2026, but we must ensure that each town within the borough has its own plan. Have its own unique plan, tailored strategies, a dedicated funding. A town charter is more than just a piece of paper. It's a statement of intent, a commitment of the specific needs, unique aspects and challenges that each community faces. It's about letting our communities take charge of their own destiny, in coordination and partnership with the council, of course. The Progress with Unity plan is a great idea, and for the 50th, 51 now, changing 25. But it's a wonderful idea, but it needs specific focus for each town centre. A town charter for each community isn't about conflicting with Progress with Unity, it's about amplifying its benefits to every corner of our borough. It's about making sure every single community, big or small, feels the impact of this progress. So while Progress with Unity is a positive step, a lack of specific town-level charters risks overlooking the vital nuances of each community. A town charter would not be a backward step, but rather a supportive partner to the successful strategy already underway in the Progress with Unity report. And I urge the Council to find a way to incorporate a town charter mechanism within the framework of the strategy, guaranteeing that all our towns, not just a few, experience the benefits and the progress of this enhanced approach. Let's make sure every community benefits from the spirit of Progress with Unity, even the smallest and most unique amongst them. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this. I just want to congratulate my ward colleague, Councillor Gerard, for bringing this, and I know he's very passionate about investment, as we all in our wards. And I think for a long time, a lot of us in the peripheral of the borough, we saw investment only go into our two main district centres in Wigan and Leigh. So, you know, I really welcome this report. I welcome the way we're going as a council with Progress and Unity, and I look forward to working with all councillors in the town of Atherton, across the way there, to just work together to really implement a focused and driven and diligent plan that's really going to benefit the town as a whole. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just a quick one, really. I supported the motion at the time, and I support the Progress with Unity. I like what you're trying to do. I think you're going to have a lot of hurdles when it comes to backbench councillors having more of a say by certain sectors of civil servants, unfortunately. But I do like what you're trying to do. It's kind of bringing things back to how they used to be, where councillors was far more involved in the day-to-day running. The only issue I have per se, if you was to minded to look at something like what Stuart put forward, is half of the councillors in here will belong to a ward like mine, which is like a suburb of the town. So I'm Bryn, a place like Hinley Green. We seem to always get overlooked. Now, I understand an element to that. More people go to the town centre. But what you're starting to see now is more and more supermarkets, buildings, businesses setting up in the actual suburb of the town. So I think any plans going forward that come down to investment and should also include the suburb of the town centre as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Cunliffe.
I wasn't going to speak, but I will. I think, you know, it's important to recognise that Progress with Unity is not just a council proposal. This is a result of work being done for the last 18 months, negotiating and consulting with individuals, with communities, with businesses, with our partners like the NHS, police, fire, and generally a very widespread consultation. And so it's developed from that. So Progress with Unity is not just about the council, it's about the National Health Service, it's about the police, it's about fire, it's about businesses, it's about communities. And the other thing that's important is Progress with Unity isn't just a plan. It's the start of a process, and Progress with Unity is a dynamic, evolving, breathing thing, and it will change as a result of those communities and involvement, modifying it, developing it, and local members. So the opportunity to base services within localities and neighbourhoods allow not only communities and backbench members and other members, but also our partners and businesses and communities themselves to start to influence what happens in their locality and gives them far more power. If you ask me what Progress with Unity will look like in 5 years' time, I don't know. Because we will all, the whole of the borough, everybody working in the borough, will develop it and change it. And it won't be a uniform one-size-fits-all in every area. Because it will be up to the people in the community, the people who live there, the businesses that work there, our partners, to develop and change those opportunities arriving at the 2 missions that we've outlined. So I really think, I think this is better than the town charter in a way, because in the same way that Councillor Jones just mentioned about some of those that weren't part of the 14 towns initially, but were smaller bits of it, it actually is an opportunity for communities really to do that. And so there are a number of issues around developing Progress with Unity. One was and one of the main ones was deeper engagement and more co-production with everybody who lives in this borough. Because the challenges we face are not just the councils and not just families. This borough faces huge challenges in terms of what's happening in the world and how the world's changing. And it's got to be all of us. So the thing about Progress with Unity is that together we can all make a big change in our communities. And that's it. And how it develops will be up to us. And when I say us, I don't mean the council. I mean everybody within the borough and who operates the borough. So I think it's a real opportunity to move on and really create something different, and something different that exists, that doesn't exist in lots of other local authority areas. Because this has got sign up an agreement from all those groups that I've said, communities, businesses, partners. So it's a real opportunity, and the voluntary sector is a real opportunity to move forward and create something different here in Wigan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conliffe. Leader, do you wish to sum up?
Please, Madam Mayor. How do you follow that? But can I just say, thank you first of all for raising it, and it was a genuine motion and question that you did ask, and it was considered, and we looked at it in the way that you presented it. So thank you for that. But also thank you for recognising how good this is, and the report itself, it's a good report. But it's not just about the report, is it? It's about what we deliver. And the Deputy Leader's quite right, and Steve's quite right, because it's not just about the 14 towns. Wigan's bigger than the 14 towns. It's about all the different communities and all that we've got to do to deliver. And I want to see as much investment as we can get into this borough. What's ever available to us, we're going to chase it. But what I can say, this is the start of the journey. This is not the end of it. This is not the be-all and end of it. This is start of the journey. And everybody, we want to be involved in this. Every member of the community, all members need to be involved in it. And that is what Progress with Unity is all about. So thank you for bringing the motion to the council. And please accept the report as we've accepted here tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. So we'll move to the vote. Can I ask everyone in favour of accepting the recommendations to show your hands, please? Thank you. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Item 6E on your agenda, the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, the possible extension. The Council is requested to consider the report on page 37 of the agenda. The report was discussed by Cabinet at its meeting on the 24th of October 2024, following a motion to Council by Councillor Cunliffe in July last year. I invite the Leader to move the recommendations.
Move the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are the recommendations seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cunliffe, do you wish to speak now?
Well, thank you. In that I moved the original motion, I think I do want to speak on it. I mean, the concern at the time that this motion was put forward was that UK Shared Prosperity Fund would end in March this year, the end of March this year. Now, unlike all the other funding for regional development and regional economic development, like Towns Fund, Levelling Up Fund, they all end in 2026. And so, with UK Shared Prosperity funding finishing in March 25, there was a gap of a year. And whilst the new government may well look at a different version of regional and economic development, then we don't know what it is yet. And hopefully in the spending review later this year we'll find out what their intentions are. But that gap left a situation whereby those schemes that were funded by UK Shared Prosperity Fund would, well, redundancy notices would have to be given at the end of December last year. And there are about 10,000 people across the country in various authorities who were employed on UK Shared Prosperity funding. Now, it equated to £1.5 billion a year. So UK Shared Prosperity Fund was £1.5 billion a year. And it was aimed mainly at many areas like ours that suffered deprivation and where there was significant regional economic inequality. It was around those types of projects. And so for it to end with no view in sight of what was coming and recognising that by 2026 there would be a different form of regional and economic development that the government will be putting out, it would have been useful to have a year's extension to UK Shared Prosperity Fund. And thanks to Wigan Council supporting that motion, the government did extend the funding. They didn't do everything we asked because, like I say, it was £1.5 billion a year. But the government extended UK Shared Prosperity Fund for a further 12-month period at 900 million. So it is a significant amount. It's not the £1.5 billion, but it's 900 million. And that will enable all the regional economic development funding opportunities there were, like Towns Fund, Levelling Up, UK Shared Prosperity Fund, to be rolled into a real opportunity for regional and economic development funding going forward. So we wait to see what it is, but at least UK Shared Prosperity Fund won't be falling off a cliff in March this year. So it will give the government, 12 months really to come up with a plan, and we'll look and see what the plan is and how it benefits areas like ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunliffe. Do any other members wish to speak? No, Leader, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and it was a joint effort in terms of really requesting this extension. And it just wasn't Wigan. Obviously, GMCA got involved and our MPs got involved, and I'm grateful to all the support we were given in extending the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. It actually is a reduction, as the Deputy Leader says, but the impact on councils is probably less than 3% because a lot of the groundwork has already taken place. But it's certainly something we want to keep an eye on, and it's certainly something we'll be pressing the government for a further extension when we get to the end of the period of time that it's down for. But it's certainly a big credit to this council, all councillors, in supporting what we're doing here to get the funding into the borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. So we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendations set out in the report, please show your hands. Thank you. Anyone against? And any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Item 6F on your agenda, the Statutory Polling District Review. The Council is requested to accept the recommendations in the report set out on page 49 of the agenda. The Electoral Registration Administration Act 2013 requires the Council to undertake regular reviews of its polling districts and polling stations. The recommendations are outlined in the report. I invite Councillor Raymond to move the recommendations.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Are the recommendations seconded? Leader, do you wish to speak now? Thank you. Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Raymond, do you wish to sum up? So we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report, please show your hands. Thank you. Any against? And any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Item 6G, the First Homes Policy. The Council is requested to accept the recommendations in the report set out on page 83 of the agenda in relation to the First Homes Policy. Members are requested to approve the policy for implementation and to adopt the proposed approach in relation to local eligibility criteria, easy for me to say, and the ongoing management of first home sales. I invite Councillor Gambles to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to say just a few brief words. I've got 10 minutes. You'll be pleased to know I am not taking 10 minutes on all of the rest of the 5 papers which we have. So I'll just do a quick summary because you've got a suite of housing papers that are all procedures, policy or strategy. And they've all gone through a variety of different meetings, so you'll have seen them in other places. So it's just really to let you know about the new government initiative. As you know, we have got really difficulty in affordable housing, and this is one of the initiatives that they have, but actually we've done some of this in the borough already, so it's a new initiative. I think they've pinched it from us really, but not really, but some of the things that we're doing already. So it's actually making sure that when we're actually working with developers who are doing the housing accommodation, they actually give us money, as you know, on section 106 money, which goes to transportation and schools as well. But what we also have is the opportunity to have homes from them on that site or off that site. So it's through the section 106 agreement. And we've done that as well with some of our section 106 agreements where we've given the opportunity for people who are actually on lower incomes to try and get onto the housing ladder. This actually gives an opportunity for people who are wanting to go on to own their own homes. We do have a number of those on our waiting list. We've had conversation with them, but of course it precludes it because of the actual income that we've got. But this is where it becomes a 30% discount. So it's just really alerting to members about the opportunity that's coming forward, but it's something that we welcome. The Housing Advisory Panel welcomed it as well, which, as you know, has got all the tenant representatives on that. So it's just really to give you a bit of a flavour of what's happening. Nothing more to add.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. Is the recommendation seconded?
Wish to second, Madam Mayor.
Do you wish to speak now, Leader? Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this, and thank you for the report, Councillor Gambles. Now, there's a lot of positives within this First Homes policy. A 30% reduction in market value price, and that gets passed on to the next person who buys it. Priority given for this scheme with local people, and also priority for key workers and members of our armed forces. Now this, so I welcome all these parts of the policy. Now this policy is for local people who cannot otherwise afford to buy in their local area. However, the question we should be asking is why local people cannot be afford to buy within the borough. Maybe a debate for another day at one of the committees. Now, in terms of Section 106 and how Section 106 is used, you know, we seem to be increasingly waiving Section 106 to build affordable houses, and I get that, I totally understand that. But we also need a balance in terms of that money being used for investment in our infrastructure. Now, in terms of affordable housing, in terms of developers, when developers put affordable housing on building schedules and building sites, if you look at the blueprints for the houses, they're generally 30% less of a plot size, 30% less bricks and materials, and less of materials that build that house to make it cheaper to build. So the developer's not really taking a hit in terms of profits. But we seem to be taking a hit in terms of losing the 106 contributions that benefit all our communities. So what I would like to, just a comment really, I mean moving forward, this is a great policy for local people, but we need to somehow think of a way to ring fence 106 contributions for local investment, but also encouraging developers to continue with that 25% commitment for affordable housing. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mirror what Councillor Watson's just said. It's overall, it's a good policy. But for me, the 106 money is an issue, Madam. So we look at affordable homes for a start. What is an affordable home? So I've always worked on building sites, and an affordable home could be anything still touching £200,000 at times. So somebody who's first-time buyer is still going to struggle to buy that house. So it's brilliant that we get the 30% discount. But I don't think it should be at the detriment to us getting the 106 monies. So in Bryn, we've had two developers on the same, two phases on the same development, have now applied to waive 106 money by saying they wouldn't be able to make a profit, which is ludicrous. You know, they wouldn't depend on the 106 money. So we're now looking at a loss of 400 grand in Bryn, that we needed that for our infrastructure. We needed it for a play park across the road. And the developer is laughing all the way. Now, what happened is, we waived it on the first one, and I said at that time, I said, now, the next developer on phase 2 will try the same thing. Fair play to planning, they stood strong at first and denied it, but then when it looked to it would go to court, we wavered on it and they got away with more money. So although I do welcome this, I more welcome the fact of keeping these 106 monies, because I do question how much of it will be local people buying affordable housing, even with this policy. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Prescott.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Steve, I think what you need to, you keep on saying that we waiver the 106 monies from these developments. It's not actually us that makes that final decision. It's the regional adjuster that actually makes that final decision. We don't make it. They're called in and they make just a point of clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prescott. Councillor O'Byrne.
Thanks for letting me speak, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to comment on, it's saying the upper limit is £250,000 for one of these houses. Is there any indication of what a lower limit might be, you know, for truly affordable houses for people who are on very, very low incomes? Does that ever get mentioned? And also, one other issue I've thought is, it says people to qualify need to have lived in the borough for 6 months. I personally don't think that is long enough. I personally think at least a year, because it could be open to abuse. People could look, all right, we'll just go and rent there for 6 months, and then we'll be eligible to buy a property at 30% discount. I just think it needs to be extended to longer than just 6 months. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Leader?
I'm happy to waive my right to speak. I think Councillor Gambles is more than enough questions to answer there. Thank you.
Councillor Gambles.
Thank you. Like as you said, it's a new policy. It's something that we'll actually work on. So I'll link all the, I hope I'll link the questions together from Councillor Watson, Jones and O'Byrne. Taking your point, I actually agree, Councillor Watson. I think we just need to have a look at that. Councillor O'Byrne, again, we need to have a look at what types of properties there are. It's not just houses, it'll be flats as well, because of course there is a high number of people who are single and couples who are just wanting a one-bed, two-bed. In addition to that, we've obviously got a very high waiting list, and I've already mentioned that we have people on the waiting list who are keen to and would like to own their own property, given the support. So again, we'll probably offer that out to our waiting list before anyone else that's actually then joining, so that 6 months negates that, because of course there's quite a lot of people who are on there. And the Section 106, I think Paul's mentioned that. I don't think have we answered your question, Councillor Jones? Is that all right? So is that okay? Is there anything else? No? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. So we'll move to the vote. All those accepting in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report, please show your hands. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Item 6H, antisocial behaviour, absolute ground for possession, guidance and procedure. The Council is requested to accept the recommendations in the report set out on page 119 of the agenda in relation to the antisocial behaviour report. The report has already been considered by the Housing Advisory Panel on the 17th of December 2024 and the Cabinet on the 19th of December 2024. Members are requested to approve the recommendations as set out in that report. I invite Councillor Gambles to move the recommendations.
Thank you, and I think you've mentioned some of the things I was going to mention actually. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Very comprehensive and detailed report. It was commended by the Housing Advisory Panel. They welcomed it, and at the same time, it's actually putting on paper what we're already doing in practice, but it will help us in the courts. So hopefully you'll be able to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. Is the recommendation seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor. Reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Leader. Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Watson.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Gambles, yet again for a really good report moving this forward. I know in the past we've spoken a lot about antisocial behaviour within the borough, and especially in our housing stock, and it's a real bugbear of mine where we have policy that's not acted on and enforced, because for me, living in a council house and being in a council house is a privilege, especially, and we're going to cover later, and I'm sure Councillor Gambles will cover this, the increase in the private renting market, which has gone up in some cases over 200% compared to social housing. Now, we always feel, in my opinion anyway, we forget about the victims of antisocial behaviour, and this new legislation, especially in terms of noise abatement orders, it's music to my ears. No pun intended, but not rock music or loud music on sociable hours. But going forward, we have to enforce this policy. I think we've all been inundated with residents who report antisocial behaviour, and they get diary sheets and they get listening devices, and there's no further action following up. So it's really a question for Sarah Rowan, I don't know if she's there tonight, who produces the report in the CRT, but if she could potentially get back to me with any progress we've made with these noise abatement orders. And also, I'm quite curious about, in terms of the list in Appendix H of serious offences that will grant absolute grounds for possession. Do we have a designated officer in the CRT who's working with the courts as soon as people are getting charged with the most serious offences, as listed in Annex H, is it, that will be evicted out of council properties? But overall, music to my ears. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Gambles.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Gerard.
Quickly remember my speech. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's only right that members of the newly formed Community Independence Alliance, or CIA for short, should support this report. I can welcome the Council adopting this policy. It's an important step forward for the Council's, and applaud the Council's commitment to addressing the serious issue of antisocial behaviour and criminality in our communities. For many years, the opposition has constantly championed zero tolerance approach to antisocial behaviour and related criminality in our council properties. We've voiced concerns about the negative impact on such conduct on the more serious residents and stressed the need for a robust response. And this, as reported, is welcome, and as Paul says, it's music to our ears. Our calls for a decisive action to protect the rights of law-abiding tenants and neighbours from disruption and harm have now been heeded sufficiently. While the adoption of this policy is, I believe, a significant step, I feel compelled to remind the Council of the consistent and unfortunately often ignored questions, comments and motions and pleas we have made over the years in this chamber and in private, in which we have highlighted the need for stronger measures and demonstrated how the rights of peaceful residents were repeatedly being trampled upon by the actions of the minority. And I really welcome this report, and it seems a positive step. It is my hope that this new policy is not simply a box-ticking exercise, though, but rather a recognition of the consistent, long-standing concerns we have voiced over the years. It is crucial that we maintain momentum and resolve to ensure that this policy is enforced with strength and consistency in order to ensure these common decency values are upheld within all our council housing stock and neighbourhoods. Ultimately, this policy, fully and consistently implemented, is not just about evictions, it is about creating safer, more vibrant communities where the fundamental rights of every single resident are upheld. And I believe this report will deliver on this commitment, what we'll be showing to the residents tonight. So thank you very much. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Gerard. Councillor O'Byrne.
I also welcome this report. I think too many people in the borough are having their lives being made miserable by antisocial behaviour, noise and criminality. I wouldn't want to live near that, and I'm sure lots of other people don't. One concern that I have, I've just read that anyone going to jail for obscene photographs of children, it should be a right to remove them immediately. But I'm working with a case at the moment where there's a man in jail for this. Neighbours have contacted me and said, we don't want him back in our area, and I don't blame them. I wouldn't want him back in that property. But I've been told he has to be contacted and asked what his intentions are. I don't think should be an option to him. I think you are done and you're in jail for that. You don't get your council property back. That's just my view, and also views of like most right-minded people. That property as well is empty at the moment. It could be housing somebody else who deserves the property, somebody who's homeless or on a waiting list. I think anyone who commits any kind of crime like that forgoes the right to a council property.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just say I think Councillor Gambles is doing a fantastic job as a Cabinet member. And she's very, very busy tonight. And if this will help us get rid of some of those who make some of our council estates not nice places to live, and it is the few, not the many, I fully support it. The only question I would have, and this isn't a dig, it's a genuine question, if this policy can help us, why have it took 11 years for us to adopt it? Obviously, it's not a dig at Councillor Gambles, who's not been in this post for 11 years. And second of all, what Councillor Watson picked up on with the noise sheets, etc., etc., will this make it a lot more easier when we go to courts? Because one of the times I've actually defended the council is when we've got a bad tenant, and I mean a really bad tenant who's making the lives of the good tenants bad, I understand that you can't take a bad case to court because it's going to be overturned. So you've got to gather enough evidence. So I understand all that. I know it's not always an easy sell to residents. Sometimes they think I'm jumping to the other side, but I do understand it. But will this policy make it easier for us to get evictions and not the fact of we're going to get it overturned? Because like the other councillors have mentioned, there's been times where we've had somebody in and out of jail for short amounts of time, and it's taken 2 years, 3 years. Sometimes we're still not getting them out. Like I say, I understand that's the decision of the courts. A lot of people don't realise that councils, it's very little that councils can actually do. It always goes through a court. But like I said, Councillor Gambles, if this policy can change that, then I fully support it. Thank you, Madam
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Braley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Being on that panel, it's shambles. Yeah, we've come across this in my ward plenty of times. There's people in jail, and the house has been empty for 12 months, and I raised this question: why are we holding on to these houses for criminals? Now, the simple thing to this is, we've got a legal department. We should have a stronger tenants agreement made into stone, that if they breach certain criteria, they're out. They get notice, like we do with leases. I mean, that's simple. It's simple enough, that. But the whole panel needs to be revamped. There's an empty house near my mother, and it's a bungalow. The little old lady's in a home, and the council's paying rent on the house, which has been empty for 12 months, but the family's paying for the home. Don't make sense, that. And they've threatened the family, if you give up the house, we'll not pay for the home. Something needs to be done there, Sue, with all that. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Whittingham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too support this policy, but I hope that evictions do come along for those antisocial people, because there's 12,500 people waiting to get homes in this borough, and some of them could be housed in those houses instead of repeatedly letting these people stay in these homes, even though they're causing antisocial behaviour. So I hope that works, but I do support this policy.
Thank you, Councillor Whittingham. Leader.
I think I'll just repeat what's been said. I support this policy too, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Gambles, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for supporting. Hopefully, throughout the chamber, we'll support that. You're absolutely right. I don't know. I think it was Councillor Gerard. It may not have been, but you're absolutely right. It's only the courts that can. There's two ways that a tenant can move out of the house. One is through the court process, and the other one is the tenant decides that they are actually going to give the tenancy back, and they're actually those are the only two ways of that, and that's across the country. It's not just through Wigan. The tenancy agreement that we have is very much reflective of that, and also again across the country. That's one of the things that we tend to have. We are beholden to the courts. That's the problem with some of this. This is very much putting into the policy, so we've actually got that framework which will give us the strength in the court system, because the courts are the ones who make that decision. And we have had knockbacks, and we have had the evidence. We will still need the evidence base from the tenants as well. That can be done anonymously as well. So we're looking at things as well from an electronic perspective. So when they're doing those timesheets and information, it is critical that we have that, because we can't actually just go on the word of one person. And it's also encouraging other people to actually make those reports as well. And again, through us as councillors, it's actually giving them the comfort that they will be supported, and how important it is to have that evidence base. So when we go into court, we've actually got something to show and demonstrate this is what's happening on a regular basis, and it's something that's not acceptable. So all of those things we'll be looking at as well. In respect of the empty properties, the homes, again, as I've mentioned, it has to be a court or them giving up the tenancy. What we do tend to do, we have conversations with people who are either in residential care, and certainly we've done that with a number of people to say, look, you really need to consider it. And then more often than not, they're actually comfortable where they are. I think it's just sometimes the family are concerned that they won't have anywhere to go, but we've actually had conversations there. And we have had conversations with people in the prison system in order to actually help them understand what's happening in respect of the fact that it is going to be very difficult for them to go back. So we have actually been able to do that as well. But I'm glad that you're going to hopefully all accept and approve the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. We'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report, show your hands, please. Thank you. All those against? And any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Item 6I, high-rise fire safety engagement strategy. The Council is requested to accept the recommendations in the report set out on page 151 of the agenda in relation to the high-rise fire safety engagement strategy report. The report has already been considered by the Housing Advisory Panel on the 17th of December 2024 and Cabinet on the 19th of December 2024. Members are requested to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. I invite Councillor Gambles to move the recommendations.
Me again? I can't believe it. Anyway, so thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Can I just say there has been a significant amount of work that's gone on these two papers, both of them with the community engagement, with the tenant engagement. There has been so many tenants involved in this as well, tenant staff, but also the community engagement team. It's been a really good piece of work, and I think what they've produced is something that we should be proud of. Not only that, they are, and the readers panel has also seen that it is made up of all of different tenants from across the borough, and that you'll see on the documentation there's a stamp to show that the readers panel have also endorsed it. So my thanks, really, I'm just really going to say thank you for this, to all the tenants that have been involved in this, all of the teams that have helped support it and moved it forward. And we've been working closely together, which is great. It's been welcomed by the HAP, most definitely, and also endorsed by TPAS, which I've written it out because I never know what it is. Tenant Participation Advisory Service, and they lead nationally on tenant engagement, so they've endorsed it as well. So really a special shout out to Liz and the engagement team who've been superb. Bill Benbow, who's the team that's also in the actual health and safety and everything else that's happening there. And also Sue Bockelbank and team who've pulled this together. So I just want to really say thank you. It's an excellent piece of work. I think it's amazing. So I'm hoping that you'll all approve it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. Are the recommendations seconded?
They are seconded, Madam Mayor, and I reserve my right to speak.
Leader. Do any members wish to contribute? Councillor O'Byrne.
Thanks for letting me speak, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to comment. I think it's a great report and I think it's fantastic for safety because it is. I have high-rise, we have them in our ward. I only had a couple of concerns, and that was, could it not be possible to put some kind of sprinkler system on the outside of the buildings? It's something that Councillor Gerard mentioned to me. And also, I do have a few concerns about the stay-put policy, because in the horrors of Grenfell, sometimes it was the people who stayed put who actually died. But I know that's the way it's recommended with the fire service, but I just think sometimes it can give you false security. Stay put, you'll be all right, but my option would be try and get out. But that's just a few comments I wanted to make. Thank you very much.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Madam Mayor. I just want to highlight a point within the report, how trends are changing with dangerous reusable vapes and the charging of electronic devices like bikes and scooters. Could we not really push this to these residents and really give them some good information about the dangers of these items, which could potentially save lives in the future? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Leader, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, because obviously Grenfell's been mentioned, and obviously there was surveys all across the country following Grenfell, and I'm pleased that certainly here in the borough that we didn't have properties that were affected by the cladding that had such a big impact on the tragedy that struck in Grenfell. But after that, there was a major survey, certainly we did a major survey, in respect of sprinkler systems, the question has been asked. And we went through all this with the tenants, and the tenants were all involved. Not one tenant wanted a sprinkler system. They were very adamant on that. Money was allocated to do that, but tenants did not want it. And when we took some advice from safety people, particularly the fire brigade, and you talk about the stay put policy, that was the advice we were given from the fire brigade. But certainly no stone was left unturned in terms of what we wanted to deliver here in the borough. And this report really goes into great detail in terms of what we want to deliver for high-rise. And all the tenants got engaged again and are certainly happy with the report, and I don't see any dissent to the report, and I'm more than happy to second it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Gambles, do you wish to sum up?
Just very quickly, as the leader said, we did actually have a look at the sprinkler systems, and we have put an alternate in, which is a voice box, so that's actually, it'll alert people, and we've also got a system where we've got all the contact details, so there's a mobile alert, but that's something that everybody was accepting of. And the vapes and yeah, you're absolutely, we are already having conversations with not just the high-rise, but other tenants as well, particularly the sheltered, because as well we've got the mobility places, so we have to be very careful about the mobility scooters, but the scooters as well, we've raised the profile about the batteries of the fact that when it's actually not well, it's what's the word, when it's not cloned, but it's not the true bike, it's not the true, so we've really alerted, and we're doing that continuously, and Bill and his team do that regularly on a regular basis, so I hope that helps. Hope you're able to approve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. So we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report, please show your hands. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Item 6J, Housing Tenant Engagement Strategy. The Council is requested to accept the recommendations in the report set out on page 185 of the agenda in relation to the Housing Tenant Engagement Strategy report. The report has already been considered by the Housing Advisory Panel on the 17th of December 2024 and the Cabinet on the 19th of December 2024. Members are requested to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. I invite Councillor Gambles to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Now, weren't you all glad I didn't take 10 minutes on each paper? I could have still been here at midnight. So just again, this has actually been worked through with the tenants, and they've been really heavily involved in this. It's been designed and developed and supported by the tenants and for the tenants. I think I've said before in this chamber, the tenant is the most important person in all of what we do in the housing world, and they're the heart. So they're the heart of the policies, the heart of the procedures and the strategies, and they've been involved in all of that. And I'm just really pleased to say that there's growing numbers of our tenants who are wanting to get involved with us, and this is why we've actually had so much good positive feedback and engagement. And again, it's the Readers Panel has also approved it, but certainly I think it's a really good piece of work, and thanks to everybody involved, thanks to the tenants and the officers, it's made a massive difference. So thank you very much. I hope you're able to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. Leader? Thank you. Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll always support anything that engages with residents, tenants and so forth. I was actually speaking to one of the members earlier on today. I'm not going to say who it was, just in case they get in trouble. But one of the things that they raised, funnily enough, is exactly a motion of mine that is in waiting for the next council meeting. So I'm just going to quickly say, and I hope I'm not going too far off the agenda, I'd love if Councillor Gambles would be interested in meeting with me before the next council meeting to look at the recommendation. It's the same as a lot of your tenants are asking for, and it is regarding new council tenants looking at ways where they could possibly have carpet and a cooker in. And the reason for that is because a lot of tenants have been homeless, so on and so on. To find that £2,000–3,000 from the start, they're kind of setting up to fail. And I was just thinking when we was talking then, if it is something we could discuss beforehand, I would even be happy if that's something your side brought in, as long as it helps the
Councillor Jones,
tenants.
I'm really sorry
Thank
to
you.
interrupt you, but that's not part of the engagement strategy, but thank you. Councillor Brearley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did attend this meeting, and I was there when the tenants was furious about these contractors. One gentleman said, a little old lady been waiting 6 months for a light bulb to be changed.
Councillor Brearley, sorry to interrupt you.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor,
but this isn't about, that's about contractors. We're talking about the engagement of the tenants, which is
yeah,
a
no, that's what
different...
it was.
But that's about contractors. It's a different topic.
No, it's not. Yeah.
This is
Tenants
the engagement strategy about engaging tenants. It's not about the contractors.
So is that the next agenda? No. Next item?
Well, that's the tenant's opinion.
Yeah, the tenants was expressing their opinions, and they was furious about it. So if it's all about the tenants too, why are they not being... The conditions were in it.
Councillor Brearley, can you speak through the chair, please? Not directly to the councillor. And we're not...
Well, everybody does that, Madam Mayor. Can you answer my questions?
No, but it comes through the chair. That's the format of any meeting.
Right? Can you ask Councillor Gambles why these sanctions are not being introduced?
If you put your questions through me, then Councillor Gambles will answer them in the summing up. That's the procedure of all the questions and what we've done.
The procedure is you just interrupt all the time. I've told you this. Let me see the legislation. Let's see the legal legislation
Councillor
where you
Brearley,
can interrupt me, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Brearley, you're breaking the rules. You're not talking on topic. I'm really sorry.
You're not fit, Mayor.
Leader.
Without notice, in conjunction with Rule 18.3, move that the council no longer be heard. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Cunliffe. We'll take it to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Brearley, Councillor Brearley, you've been silenced. I'm sorry you can't speak anymore. Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Leader? Oh, sorry, Leader, you spoke before, didn't you?
No, I only moved that you didn't. I'm happy with the report, and I'm happy to second it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Gambles, would you like to sum up?
Happy to move the report, Madam Mayor.
We'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report, please show your hands. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Item 6K, the housing gas policy. The Council is requested to accept the recommendations in the report set out at page 219 of the agenda in relation to the housing gas policy report. The report has already been considered by the Housing Advisory Panel on 10th of September 2024 and Cabinet on the 19th of December 2024. Members are requested to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. I invite Councillor Gambles to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. Do we have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Leader. Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll only be brief. Thank you, Councillor Gambles. I'm pretty sure you'll be ready for a drink in a bit after all the... But well done so far. Yeah, this gas policy. I've just got a few... I've not got an issue with the report. I think it's fantastic. I've just got a few issues with... And I think people know I might have made a complaint over contractors over the length of time that they're leaving people with boilers that are broken down. Over winter, I've had residents come to me where they've been left for not days, but weeks and sometimes months. You know, in the report it mentions about pipe work. An instance at the moment where pipe work has been left exposed. It's not gas pipe work, it's, you know, water, but with no radiator. This is back from November. And they came on Friday after me putting a complaint in, just to measure up. And I think, you know, all these radiator systems all just come as a standard system, so I may be wrong. But I think we need to tighten up response time to, like, gas breakdowns. It is very important, you know, especially this time of year, you know, that we ensure that their response time and the contract that we use are up to standard, and that they respond to call-outs as quick as that we'd expect them to, which I think would be in 24 hours, depending on the temperature outside, not weeks and months. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bailey, you've been silenced. I'm sorry, you can't speak.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I want clarification on this. I want it in writing as well, because what you just said there, Councillor Mundy, I don't think it's right. Councillor, cannot. On any item, on every item if I want to.
Councillor Bailey, it is in the Constitution. I'm sorry. Can I ask you to sit down? We'll
It said to have your voice heard by the landlord. Councillor Bradley was merely showing resident tenant engagement that they had concerns about landlords. None of that had to go so far. That's all I'm going to say, but it didn't have to go.
I'll refer to legal. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, the Constitution provides very clearly that if a member is being disruptive or is interrupting or is persistently disobeying the Mayor, that a motion can be made, that the member not be heard any further. That motion has been passed. I know Councillor Jones is trying to debate the issue, but that motion has been passed by full council, and Councillor Braley, in accordance with the Constitution, cannot be heard for the remainder of the meeting.
Councillor Bailey, the motion is legal. I'm sorry, you've been silenced. I'm asking you to sit down now, please. It was also about you being rude to me. Right. Councillor Bailey, please sit down or I will have you removed from the chamber. Yes. We'll adjourn. We won't stop it. We'll adjourn. And we will ask you to remove yourself from the council chamber. Can I ask members to adjourn the meeting, please? Thank you, everyone. So we're still on item 6K, housing gas policy. Does any other members wish to speak on the policy? Leader, do you wish to speak now?
Even though I've had a rest, Madam Mayor, I'm quite happy to second them without speaking.
Councillor Gambles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve. I move to... Yeah, thank you. I forgot I'm doing something.
We'll move straight to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report, please show your hands. Any abstentions? Sorry, any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that vote is carried. Moving on to item 7A, Treasury Management, the half-yearly review. The Council is requested to consider the report set out at page 257 on the agenda. The Council is requested to approve the position on Treasury Management and the changes to the capital programme as appended and set out in the report. The report has already been considered by the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee on the 7th of November and by Cabinet on the 28th of November 2024. I invite Councillor Raymond to move the recommendations.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Are the recommendations seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor. Reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this, and thank you to the finance team for a very balanced report. Now, I've just got really a comment under the accounts of the HRA. Now, we've got in there social housing decarbonisation of £4.8 million and carbon reduction of £3.56 million, which is totalling £8.63 million on carbon-based schemes. Now, I understand that some of this money is coming from national grants, but it's still taxpayer funded. This is at a time when we have 12,000 families on the social housing waiting list. So maybe an impact assessment needs to be conducted to best determine where this public money would be better spent. And I believe it should be spent on a much needed investment in council houses, so which will include the drastic prosperity of all our residents who are on this waiting list. So like I say, it's just a comment, and thank you for allowing me to speak on this, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to be quick, because the plan's not going to work tonight by the leader. We're going to talk about the grooming gangs. But basically, Madam Mayor, what I do want to say is I couldn't agree with Councillor Watson more. We need to look at council housing. I know it's known by that side as much as ours. What we're in at the moment is a housing crisis. 16,000 people on the waiting list, 1,000 of them which are homeless. We're in a crisis. I understand money doesn't grow on a tree. I understand there's minds in here that understand this more than I do. But I think we need to look at any capital that we can get, trying our damnedest best to put it into council housing. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Leader? Oh, sorry, Councillor Gambles.
Well, I was a bit left out. I didn't start the report. I thought I might as well join in. No, just to say about the decarbonisation, it is council housing. It's actually everything that's in the HRA is council housing related. And the decarbonisation and the improvements, it's actually to try and adjust and help people with the bills. So we do have a responsibility for some of our council tenants, and there are some heating elements and different things that are in there. We need to actually remove asbestos. We're actually also needing to improve our insulation, and all of that is part of the carbonisation programme. So everything, all of that is going towards and with all of our council stock and our council tenants for the benefit of them, and hopefully it will reduce the bills. We have done a pilot programme on a couple of our properties. There's one in Lowton that we've been to, and I forgot where the other one was as well. We found there were some issues with that, so we did the pilot, so we knew that there was some actual costs attached to some of the things that we were doing. So we're looking at that again so we can make sure that we've got an idea of exactly what has to happen. So there will be some other things that are taking place in order to address that, but it is all going into council properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. Leader?
Happy to second the report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond, do you wish to sum up? So we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendation as set out in the report, please show your hands. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Item 7A, the HRA rent setting report of 2025-26. Can I remind members who are council house tenants that they will have a personal and prejudicial interest in this item, but they can stay in the meeting and vote. On page 289 of the agenda, we have a report which was presented to the Housing Advisory Panel prior to being considered by the Cabinet on the 19th of December. The report was also considered by the Confident Council Scrutiny Committee at a later meeting that day on the 19th of December. The Council is requested to agree the recommendations as set out in the agenda. I invite Councillor Raymond to move the recommendations.
Move, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are the recommendations seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor. Reserve the right to speak.
Do any other members wish to speak? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So from what I understand here, we're looking at about an increase of 2.7, which will raise about £2.5 million for the council. So I'm never in favour of raising rent for tenants for obvious reasons. None of you in here are. But if I can be shown here tonight that this £2.5 million will be invested correctly in getting more inspectors, whoever else we need to get the repairs done on council houses quicker, I could look at supporting it. But with one bit of a warning that if we keep raising it 2% every year, within 10 years, that's 20%. That's a massive increase. But my main problem, Madam Mayor, is we need to invest. If we're going to bring in extra money like that, we need to put it where it's needed. Council house repairs at the moment is another crisis that we've got. People are waiting 12, 18 months and still not having repaired. One of the reasons we don't, as councils, and this is for every council, is build more council houses, is because we wouldn't be able to maintain them, because we can't maintain the actual stock that we've got now. So if Councillor Gambles can come back to me on that, I'd be very much appreciated. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I'm against this 2.7% rent increase. It may come as a surprise to some of us, but let me explain why. From the report, it does state, as part of the autumn budget, government announced an increase in national insurance together with lowering the threshold upon which employers start to pay national insurance. These changes will impact both the direct staffing costs within the HRA and impact on suppliers and contractors within the HRA. Then we have the impact of inflation, which is putting further pressure on the housing revenue account. So everything's going up. So additionally, the national insurance increases set by this government will cost this council an extra £4.5 million per year in staff wages contributions from April. Now, there's no such thing as a tax on employers. There's only a tax on customers. And in this case, our customers are our residents. And these are the ones who were left footing the bill with these tax increases. We must also look at the impact of social housing and its push of the lack of social housing, which is pushing up rents by 10% this year as per this report and 31% over the past 5 years, which is absolutely astronomical, and it's making all of our residents very, very poorer. A prime example is a 2-bedroom social house is renting for around £400 per month under the council, but private stock is £800 per calendar month. Then we must look at the 21% of residents who are not in receipt of full or partial housing benefit or universal credit. These are what we call jams, aren't they? Just about managing, and what impact will this have on those? The report also states that we're spending £13.2 million a year on the interest on loans. Interest alone on loans is taking up over 10% of the annual budget of the housing revenue account, and we're only paying £3.55 million on the repayment of that debt, which is absurd. So as previously mentioned, the employer national insurance increases in April will increase the cost of all goods and services in this country, and it will further exacerbate the pressure on all our financially vulnerable, those who are living within our housing stock. Forcing inflation which is forced inflation generally throughout the country, which is why, in good conscience, I cannot vote for this 2.7% increase on social rents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Cunliffe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Every year we seem to go through this process of trying to educate the opposition about the housing revenue account. The housing revenue account is a ring-fenced account. The only money that goes into the housing revenue account is rent. The only money that comes out of the housing revenue account is for our council housing. For repairs, you want improvements in repairs, you want more housing built. But if the housing revenue account doesn't have any money coming in, it won't have any money to do the repairs, to build the council houses, or to do refurbishment programmes.
Councillor, what's your point of explanation?
We've previously mentioned that the government can provide grants to the housing revenue account to decarbonisation programmes, as previously mentioned. So you're wrong in what you're saying, that all the money for the housing revenue account does not come directly from rent, and that's the point of explanation I'd like.
Of course, there are grants from government towards housing, but don't remember, and you remember in fact, Councillor Watson talks about interest payments. The Conservative government forced us many years ago to pay them back nearly £100 million, and that had to be borrowed, and that is being paid back, and that was around us buying our own houses. So the government at the time put a lot of that debt onto the housing revenue account. But for years they have proposed no rent increase. Can you imagine the amount of money that the situation would be in now? And you talk about increased costs, you know, the national insurance implications, and we know that the cost of living and cost of goods and services and all the equipment and the you know, the fabrics you need to refurbish and do houses has significantly increased over the last few years. So the only way we can do that is by raising the rents. And we are raising it by 2.7% this year in order to enable us to continue to do those things. Now, what you have to consider is, and it's been pointed out, the council rents probably about £100 a week, £400 a month for a council rent. I can tell you there are houses terraced houses in Lee that are renting for £1,000 a month. So it is a significant improvement. Now remember that nearly a third of the tenants of council housing receive full housing benefit. And full housing benefit, the council get government, are paid by the government for the housing benefit. Another third of the tenants are on partial housing benefit, so part of it. So actually, if we do not increase rents, if we have a 0% increase, the amount we get from the government would not be increased. So we'd actually be turning away government grant for housing benefit in order for us to do all the things you keep saying you want us to do and that we want to do. But if we listen to you, there'd be no funding in order to do that. And whose situation would be worse than then? It'd be the council tenants.
There isn't a point of explanation, a personal explanation. Yeah, so can you tell me which part you think has been misunderstood or clarified?
If we listen to you, that was basically referred to, I'd made such a comment. Keith, sorry, Madam, I've said I'd support this as long as the money's being spent correctly, so he's totally off. I'm not quite sure what Keith's on about. We'll support it. We just want to make sure the 2.5 million is going to be spent wisely, that's all, Keith. Thank you, Madam.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll probably be abstaining tonight from this motion until I'm in full, until I have all the facts and figures in front of me. Because on this pie chart in the report, I've left it up, I've taken my glasses off. It says a detailed consideration of the medium-term forecast for the housing revenue account will be presented to Cabinet and Council in February and March 25. But I think we've mentioned now 3, maybe 4 years on the trot, an explanation of why the cost of delivering services is the biggest chunk of the account. It's currently at £26 million and 300,000 or whatever it is. And void properties, which we have many of in this borough, are costing 9.5 million. And we've had motions and we've spoken on this before, and we've been promised that these void properties will be hurried up and get people, tenants in them houses, and be rented, and we'll have income coming in. But yet we still have the same situation, the same houses in many areas still empty, the same flats. And quite frankly, I'm getting sick of having the same conversations with officers over it. I remember these estate inspections, and they said it'll be done. So if we are to raise rents, I'd like to see the full steam ahead, basically, on getting these void properties back into rentable standard. Because it's a crying shame that we've got 12,000 people waiting to come in. All that could be generating income for the council, and we may not have to put the rent up as much. But I'll be abstaining tonight until we can have, or maybe you can send it before then, of the breakdown of why it's costing £26 million for the delivery, the cost of delivering services, the biggest part of that cost, and why void properties is currently standing just under £10 million. Thank you.
Councillor Gambles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. I'll just very quickly comment on some of the items that you've drawn out. As we've mentioned, the funding that we've got, that we had concerns, didn't we, last year? It was 7.7%. Inflation it should have been about 11%. It was capped, so we had a problem there. So we actually lost 11 million that would have come into the housing revenue account, which is absolutely fine, because none of us wanted to actually give people difficulty. The massive concern across this chamber was, could people afford it? Will they be able to pay? Our council rents are 99% paid, because what we've done, we've actually worked with the welfare team and the Here For You campaign, and we've actually targeted and supported. So we've got 99% of our rents collected, which I would say is pretty unheard of in the rest of the country. But that's because we have worked with our tenants, we've worked with the welfare team, we've actually made sure and targeted what people can actually claim from a benefit perspective. We talked about benefits at the meeting that was actually at the HRA meeting. One of the tenants actually said, when we were talking and discussing about this particular item, was that I'm one of those people who does not get benefit. I am happily going to pay the 2.5% because of the services I receive. I'm very happy with those. So the tenants themselves are recognising and understanding that in order for us to continue investing in those properties, that we have to raise the rents. Costs have gone up, inflation's gone up, getting staff is difficult. Councillor Jones mentioned about inspectors. Funnily enough, we were having a conversation only this morning in the need for more inspectors. We know that we're having to do that. We know that our workforce is difficult to attain. Getting skilled workforce is extremely difficult. But at the same time, we're actually working and making sure that the money in the HRA is actually going onto those properties. The voids you've mentioned, we've talked about this before, Councillor Gerrard, many times, and that it is a churn. In this borough, at any one time, there could be 4,000 empty properties. We are a single figure percentage of that. The majority of them are a private sector, because we keep churning them. We might be actually having a number of properties, but we're churning. We're actually moving it through, so as we get other things. And we've also talked about the level and the cost of actually putting some of those properties back into ownership and back into use. So there is a difficulty with that. It needs to have funding. It needs to have money. So we do have some problems. The Tory government reduced our budget, our rents 1% for 3 years. We've lost £30 million year on year on year. That's actually a cumulative effect. That has damaged us and what we've been able to do in order to make sure that our properties are fit for purpose, that our voids are actually being done together. We've actually got our day-to-day repairs, our cyclical maintenance, there's the emergency repairs. As we've said at this chamber before, what we've actually done is made sure that the backlog that happened in COVID has now been completely decimated and disappeared, and we're working on our day-to-day repairs with our teams. We're increasing the numbers of people that are actually working on it, not just from an internal perspective, but externally as well. And we're improving that journey and making sure that the tenants are actually feeding back to us on all of that. We need to increase the rents by this 2.7%. Now, if we were actually, it was in September, that was the level of the inflationary rate, so it's plus 1%. So at the moment, the inflation rate is far higher than that, and we're not changing that. We're actually sticking with what we're saying, but this is really critical. This money is going for tenants, by tenants. The tenants, par one, actually voted for this at the Housing Advisory Panel. They understand what the budget is. They understand what has to happen. They understand the investment that's made, because they are the ones who are asking for that. We've now got an interim business plan. It's just going to be for a year, and we're now working on, with tenants, a 30-year business plan. So we'll be able to bring a lot of this information together, and Councillor O'Byrne will be part of that process, and so we'll be able to share that information. So I do implore everyone in this chamber to really consider hard and actually make sure, what are you voting for? You're voting for an increase to actually support tenants. So thank you, and I hope that we get an approval for this.
Thank you, Councillor Gambles. Leader, you reserved your right to speak. Would you like to speak now?
I think I'm quite happy what I've heard tonight. Madam Mayor, I've been very happy to play second fiddle in the Susan Gambles show, and I'm happy to second and move the report.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I think Councillor Gambles has covered almost everything. But Councillor Watson, that was a really good commentary, convoluting all the national issues and trying to over-sensationalise something that's not. I would like to bring your attention, first of all, I would like to say that this is one of those decisions that we never take lightly, but I would like to bring your attention to the difference that's there in the rent levels.
Councillor Raymond, can I ask you to speak through the chair, please?
Yes, the rent levels between private and the council rents, which is 102%. So, that is the difference that people want, and they prefer to have a council house rather than try the private market. And again, as Councillor Gambles has said, if you ask the tenants, they would happily pay this rent increase rather than live in poor housing. Councillor Gerard, you talked about the void properties. You talked about the 26 million that we are spending on providing the services. Unfortunately, that is the financial and economic climate we have to operate in. Councillor Gambles has already highlighted the inflation, the issues in construction market, the repair issues, and everything that we inherited from a lull in the COVID period. So, unfortunately, we are in that situation, and we have to operate in this economic climate. Steve Jones, Councillor Jones, you said that, if we can commit that we would spend this £2.5 million in repairs and all other services. So I would like to bring your attention to this pie chart that is included in the report, that if you look at there, more than 50% of our budget goes to exactly what you pointed out. But I think Councillor Gamble's most of other points. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Prescott. Sorry, Councillor Prescott, you can't speak now. Councillor Raymond summed up, sorry. All those in favour of accepting the recommendation as set out in the report, please show your hands now. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that vote is carried. Item number 8 on the agenda, questions and comments on deliberations of Cabinet and committees under Rule 8. Councillor Watson wishes to ask a question which was submitted under Rule 8.10 of the Rules of Procedure. The question is as follows. After the disappointing government decision regarding WASPI women, will the leader reaffirm Wigan Council's full support for the WASPI campaign? Is there a response, Leader?
I think I covered it earlier. I think Councillor Watson will accept what I've said earlier as answering his question. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Item number 10, notice of motions. Number 1, a motion has been submitted by Councillor Merritt, which is set out on page 307 of the agenda. Councillor Merritt, you may now speak to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. This motion is a call for the Council to support Baroness Floella Benjamin's national call to Ofcom, the Government and the BBC to improve television programmes and online media services for older children and young people so that they are less likely to migrate to unsuitable media platforms that may be detrimental to their well-being. And I know we've all been really shocked by the stories of young people, such as Molly Russell, accessing unsuitable online content that deeply affected their well-being, leading to mental illness or even death. And I am sure that we all support the call for media sites to be controlled to avoid children accessing unsuitable content. There are also calls in some countries to limit young people's use of iPhones. But have we actually thought that more could be done by us in this country to provide better quality, suitable media for children and young people, both through television and legitimate online programmes and apps? Have we considered that the decline in the quality of children's TV programmes and a failure to grasp opportunities to develop online content and apps that are designed for children and teens has contributed to their migration away from legitimate media content to potentially damaging and unsuitable adult material? As far back as 2018, the media watchdog Ofcom called on ITV, Channel 4 and Channel 5 to improve their children's programming. A review they undertook found a lack of original shows for older children, a limited range of factual programmes and not enough on-screen diversity. All 3 channels had cut back their original children's programming. Ofcom said it wanted the channels to revitalise their approach to how and what they offer to young audiences. In particular, the regulator said the broadcasters should find innovative ways to use the internet to appeal to younger viewers. This is 2018, so it's quite some time ago. Ofcom pointed out 3 main issues with channels' children's programmes. They said there is a lack of original, high-quality programmes specifically made for older children across all programme genres, a limited range of programmes that help children to understand the world around them, and a limited range of original, high-quality children's programmes that allow UK children of all ages and backgrounds to see themselves and their lives reflected on screen. Now, they did not include the BBC in this edict, but they should have. And the call from Ofcom did not result in improved children's programming, and nothing has happened since. As a consequence, the decline in children and young people's television has simply continued, and 7 years on, things have only got worse. So in December, on a Radio 4 Today programme, Baroness Floella Benjamin decried the decline in the quality of children's television and a failure to produce the programmes which have captivated previous generations of children and young people. And you can include all of us in this. You know, programmes such as Biker Grove, Grain Chills, Tracy Beaker, she pointed out that BBC that the BBC reaches 70% of young people at one time or another, so has the opportunity to really capture their interests and involvement, but it has not kept pace with the way children are consuming media content and needs to address not only the quality of TV programmes for younger people, but also it needs to be across other types of media content, such as streaming channels, websites and YouTube. When we were young, some time ago, I know for many of us, but there was that 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. slot. We all remembered it every day, young people, and that gave birth to quality children's drama, news programmes, nature programmes, science programmes, arts programmes, magazine programmes such as Blue Peter, quiz shows. And then on Saturday morning TV, for those of us old enough to remember, you know, we had, you know, TV entertainment, the multicoloured swap shop, Tis Was, you know, that kinds of thing. You know, similarly, the millennials, which is like my sons, you know, my children, you know, now in their 40s, they enjoyed high-quality TV programmes that reflected the real lives of young people. And we know that BBC Children's TV has moved to CBeebies and CBBC. Those of us with tiny children will know that, because that produces really, you know, well-loved programmes for small children, and so does the kids' YouTube. But there is a significantly more limited offer and quality for older children and for teens. And if you look back at children's TV in the 60s, 70s and 80s, you'll see how much it's declined. So now on a Saturday morning we have cooking programmes instead of good kids entertainment. And the CBeebies stuff is really very kiddie targeted. So Baroness Benjamin said that unless there was a push towards improving offerings for children, the knock-on effect on their welfare could be seismic. She said, I feel that children's programmes, as we know them, are in crisis because children are migrating to online platforms and watching mainly adult material, which for some could be damaging to their well-being. You know, children's practitioners haven't got the work or opportunity to be creative for young people and show them their lives. And programme makers aren't making things that show them their lives. You know, where are those programmes of the past? Where are the shows that used to happen? It will be detrimental to the industry if we don't have those programmes. You know, we used to have programmes that were there just for children, and the diversity of programmes was vast. You know, we do remember, some of us here will remember really inventive, you know, programmes for children and young people. But I already see my 7- and 9-year-old grandsons migrating to trashy American videos on their iPads. It's awful, and you want to hear them. And there is limited content on TV for young people in their teens. And we're missing opportunities to provide online content that is stimulating and challenging for young people. Adults have numerous BBC apps on their phones. You know, we all do. We've got news, we've got sport, we've got music. Why not have an app with quality content that is aimed at younger people? Ofcom, the government and the BBC need to listen to children and young people, TV commissioners and those who care about young people, their education and their childhood memories. As a children's educator and a grandmother of 3 grandsons, I am afraid that a lack of good quality children's programmes across the media is only driving more children to harmful platforms that will damage their well-being rather than nurture their imaginations and their knowledge in a positive way. As budgets have got tighter, I am aware that children do not pay the licence fee, and their interest may be low on the agenda for programme makers, but it is clear that our grandchildren will not have the experience of watching the kind of outstanding programmes that I and my children loved, and that unless we invest in our children and young people, we risk damaging our future. Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy has written to streaming sites to ask them to prioritise higher quality content, but I feel that we should write more strongly to her as the government and the BBC and Ofcom to seek investment into producing quality children's TV programmes. I think that they should speak to young people themselves and find out the kind of programmes and media platforms and apps that would attract them. We want young people to be engrossed in quality television and media that entertains, informs and educates, not be drawn to unsuitable adult sites that harms them. So can I urge you to support this motion? Thank you.
Is the motion seconded? Councillor Eastoe, do you wish to speak on the motion now or reserve your right?
I'll speak now, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. I second the motion to write to Ofcom, the Government and the BBC for enhanced investment into children's programming as championed by Baroness Floella Benjamin. It is a critical moment in our society where online activity is topical and at the forefront of our own media. But with this motion, we must prioritise the well-being and development of our children. The current state of children's entertainment in the UK is alarming, and the BBC hasn't made any new programmes for young people since 2017. So we're witnessing a significant decline in content specifically aimed at a young audience, with traditional programming once providing essential life lessons, and the engagement is now lacking. Ofcom has reported a 20% decline in broadcast TV viewing amongst 4 to 15-year-olds, who are instead turning to unregulated platforms like YouTube, exposing them to content that may not be suitable for their age, which often exposes children to violence and themes of an adult nature. The well-being of our young people directly impacts our future. 1 in 6 children aged 5 to 17 are facing mental health issues, often tied to exposure of unsuitable content. We're not just talking about ratings or viewer numbers, we're talking about the real lives and struggles and the kind of future we want for our next generation. It is essential that we prioritise the importance of investing in children's programming as an investment into our future. We have to hold our broadcasters, including the BBC, accountable to provide high-quality content that meet the needs of young people. And we should regulate the online platforms to guarantee safer viewing experiences to protect our children from potential harm caused on the unregulated sites. Supporting this motion is not just about advocating for policies, it is about securing a safer future for our young people and creating an environment where their creativity can thrive and their mental health is prioritised. We owe it to ourselves and our children and their future to act now to ensure that we provide the best possible opportunities for them to learn and grow and develop. I urge you to join me in supporting this motion to demand that our government, Ofcom and the BBC take immediate action to invest in children's programming and prioritise the well-being of our young people.
Thank you, Councillor Eastoe. Do any other members wish to speak? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam. Yeah, there is other countries thinking about doing stuff like this. China. That's who's thinking about doing it, Madam. I felt for a minute then like I was in a communist country. Well, we're going to, and let's be honest, you don't want children watching YouTube and stuff like that because you want to watch the indoctrination that the left wing want to put on children. I'm a big, big believer in the best people to educate children and choose what they do are the parents. Now, when I first came here in 2016, believe it or not, I was actually a Labour supporter. But what I've found over the last 9 years is that you want to run this nanny state where you tell everyone what to do in your image of what's good for them. Is there some good points made? Of course there's some good points made. And Councillor Merritt might believe what she's saying. I'm not actually saying she's a communist. Which, by the way, is not an insult. It's just somebody on the political spectrum, so it's not actually an insult. But this idea, we're seeing since Keir Starmer got in, we're going to limit this, we're going to do this, you can't say this on Facebook. Madam Mayor, it's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. Some of the points that was just mentioned are exactly what China's done. Before you know it, it'll be 15-minute cities and it'll be social scores for your behaviour. So, Madam Mayor, I want safe content for our children, but I don't want us to force anything in a country where we should be libertarians, not telling businesses what they should do. Now, a second thing, how do we force companies to put this type on? I remember when I was a kid, Captain Planet and stuff like that, and I look back and I think, yeah, the programmes was better, the films was also better. But there'd be a reason So in a country where it's about, they put stuff on if they get viewers to make money. So if they've stopped doing them, there'll be a reason they've stopped doing them. Now, you could argue with the BBC, it's taxpayer funded, so I buy that argument that you should have some control on what it puts on. But let's be honest, 99% of people think we should scrap the BBC. It's criminal that they charge as well. So I am very scared, Madam Mayor, of what some elements in this council, and I'll be honest, the majority of the cabinet, it's not, I think all of you, it's not the very reasonable people, but there's elements of you in here that scare me of carrying on this Keir Starmer left-wing communist track that we're on. Madam Mayor, thank you very much.
Councillor Jenny Bullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. If I could just recover myself a moment. You're all right, I will support the motion gladly. And I'm going to get a bit nostalgic as well, like Councillor Merritt, and do a bit of the way we were. Because I remember Dame Floella Benjamin when she was just Floella Benjamin. And she was the presenter of BBC's Play School programme for children. And she was usually seen in brightly coloured dungarees, if I remember, with coloured patches all over. And she invariably had a very curly hair in wonderful pigtails. Yeah, this was one of the classic and staple menu of programmes from the BBC, which were very much part of our daily routine when I was bringing up my family. And there were many more memorable ones around tea time, which have been referred to as well at the end of the school day. But time has moved on, and not necessarily for the better, because we well know the dangers posed online for all of our children. So where am I coming from on this? Well, I believe that childhood is and should be a precious time of innocence, fun, laughter, free from anxiety, secure and feeling loved and cherished. A time of learning, of socialising with others, full of joy and happiness. Sadly, online platforms can threaten this childhood. Unless there are suitable alternatives, children will access what is freely available, but not necessarily appropriate. As a national institution, the BBC is in a position to provide exciting, educational, child-centred programmes, and I agree that we should urge them to do so. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watson.
Thank you for allowing me to speak on this motion, Madam Mayor. And I must admit, the first part of the motion I totally agree with. We do need better content from our national broadcaster in terms of children's programming. But it's the second part of this motion that doesn't sit easy with me. And it's all about why should Ofcom, the government and BBC regulate what our children watch? That is not their responsibility, that is our responsibility. Now, I'll give you a little bit of context here. My daughter's in secondary school. She has an iPhone and she's got a desktop computer. Now, she cannot access social media because I don't allow it. Okay, I get reports if she, I get a weekly report of what she's accessed on her computer, how long she's been on there, and I can block what she watches anytime she does so. So in terms of harmful content, what she's exposed to, it's not the state's responsibility, it's the parental responsibility. So because of that, we cannot and should not have the government and the BBC regulating social media, websites and YouTube. Besides that, you have CBeebies for kids, you have iPlayer for kids, you have ITV Player for kids, and you have YouTube Kids, all of them which are kids friendly. In terms of other social media platforms like apps that she has in terms of viewing platforms, Netflix, Amazon, what's the other one she has? Disney Plus. They've all got age-restricted content on there. So yet again, it's parental responsibility. So because of this, and because we're going into an Orwellian type future, I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know how to follow that because he's mentioned everything I was going to make the responsibility being down to the parents. But we're going to get nostalgic. It's not just the BBC what provided great content. You know, it was the ITV. You know, I was a bit more of a Tiswas fan. You know, and then World of Sport, Big Daddy, and all that. You know, the A-Team. So it's not just the BBC what provide child content. And you mentioned about the older children, which I do agree with, but there's plenty of channels now, even on Freeview, where they're educational programmes, you know, and they're quite good, really. I think the nostalgia, the rose-tinted glasses, what we've got now is never really going to come back, and they were great days. You had your children a few hours in the morning, at the afternoon when you came back, and on Saturday it was up until the 18th finish, wasn't it, you know, on RTV. But them days are never going to come back. I think we've got to make sure that, like Paul said now, there's more content out there now than there's ever been. And it's up to the parents to be responsible for their children, as they should be, in what they watch, how they behave themselves, and then also down to the schools. You know, there's a lot of content in schools that children should be accessing at the moment, but it's being taught in lessons, and it shouldn't be there. So I agree with the motion, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Merritt, I now invite you to sum up on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there's been a little bit of a misunderstanding of the motion over there. I mean, and some of you have spoken very well and made some really good points, but under no circumstances anywhere in that motion does it talk about restricting or blocking children from accessing other content or, you know, material. What the motion asks for is a support, not just from me or whatever, you know, but from, you know, very respected people in the media have called for an improvement in the content of children's programming, and for them, for people like the BBC, ITV or whoever to create suitable, challenging, entertaining, informing websites, apps aimed at children and young people in order to stop them from being attracted and moving towards adult or harmful content. So there's nothing, I don't know what the word was, Nanny stating it at all. It was asking that we get better content and better programmes and, you know, alternative and more suitable options for children to engage with so that they don't want to go and access some of the other things, you know, that they perhaps oughtn't to be. It will give them the opportunity to be entertained without having to do those kinds of things. That's what the motion was calling for. There was nothing in this that was saying that we should stop anybody from accessing things. It was just that, you know, and you're quite right, parental control and so on, and parental watchfulness is really important in this. But we all know from things we've heard, sometimes parents don't know what their children are accessing online. And so this is really a call to have, you know, kind of more mainstream programmes and entertainment for young people, because the quality of them at the minute is very poor. And there was nothing in it that was suggesting that we should be controlling what people watch. It was about them having better quality content to make better choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Merritt. So can I put the motion to the vote? All those in favour, please show your hands. Thank you. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. Motion number 2. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Cunliffe, which is set out on page 307 of the agenda. Councillor Cunliffe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think over the last 20 years there's been a significant concern about adult social care. We've got an increasing demographic change, increasingly older population, and also young people of working age with a disability, creating tremendous pressures on adult social care budgets. And of course that wasn't helped during the coalition government when local authority funding was significantly cut. And it's got to the point now where in this authority something approaching up to 40% of all council spend is on adult social care, which is a significant increase in percentage of spend over the last few years. And then if you add children's social care onto that, somewhere around about just over 60% of everything the council spends is on social care, either adults or children. And successive governments have recognised the challenge that we face. And I think even going back many years to when our Greater Manchester Mayor was in the Department of Health, and he talked about trying to address the problem of the funding of adult social care. It was suddenly called the death tax and didn't get any support or anything. Theresa May, she in 2017 and 2018 started to talk about a way of dealing with the problems of the funding of social care. And that didn't get any support either because it was the dementia tax. The Dilnot report, which brought about recommendations as to how to address it, met nearly 15 years ago, 2011 I think it was. None of their recommendations were implemented. 2019, Boris Johnson stood on the steps of Downing Street and said, I have a plan to solve forever the problem of social care. Still in the same situation. So when the government announced that Louise Casey would chair an independent commission into the adult social care reform and address this problem, I was really pleased that that would be announced. I was a bit disappointed that it would only report in 2028. Having thought about it since, I mean, my initial thing was, oh no, it's been kicked into the long grass. But when you think about it, in the fact that over 20 years, successive governments, reports have never managed to do this, I started to take the view of, I think an independent commission that really looks at the issue, consults widely on it, takes evidence and comes up with recommendations that will finally solve the problem of adult social care and children's social care in this country. I'd rather people take the time to get it right rather than come up with a quick decision that actually fails. Because I think that's what we've had in the past. People making very quick decisions about this is where we're going to go, being discredited. And so I really do think now, having thought about it, a considered independent commission looking at finally resolving this would be very beneficial. In 2021, the Health and Social Care Select Committee looked at the funding of social care. They recommended that in order to meet the pressures and demands on social care would require a £7 billion a year investment year on year for a number of years. The chairman of the select committee at the time expressed concern when the government only put in 1.7 billion. And he said 1.7 billion is well below the 7 billion that the Health and Social Care Select Committee would recommend. The chair of that committee was Jeremy Hunt, who was saying that 1.7 billion was significantly less than what his committee was recommending. 2022, Jeremy Hunt is Chancellor of the Exchequer. Does he respond to that? No. No, he doesn't invest the £7 billion. And so continually, this service has been significantly underfunded. And in terms of local authorities, there's a significant pressure on local authority spend. Like I say, it's probably approaching somewhere over 60% here. I know authorities where the spend on social care is 80% of their budget. Much of what we've done here in terms of transformation of service, better lives at less cost, the amount of new supported housing we've provided and supported living, such that 97% of all people with a learning disability in this borough live in their own home or with family. It's the third highest in the country. We've worked really closely with our care homes so that we now have, in terms of quality, the highest in Greater Manchester and the highest standard of quality in the North West due to work we've done with them. Home care has seen a significant improvement in quality, probably around about 95%, rated good or outstanding. And we've seen significant improvements in this, yet managed to retain a balanced budget here in Wigan. So when Baroness Casey is chairing her independent commission, perhaps they need to come to look at Wigan and see how things can be done differently and transformed. And I'm sure we'll be putting things in. However, if the Commission is reporting in 2028, any recommendations are not likely to be actioned or delivered for another few years after that. So whilst I would ask that we say to the Secretary of State that we welcome the Independent Commission and that, well, actually, that we'd like to contribute to the evidence that's given to the Commission, this government really needs to consider giving fair funding for social care during the period of that commission until all its recommendations are actioned and delivered, and that there is a full financial agreement on that. So yes, do it right, take time, get the answers that will give us the solution to the problem, action them, deliver them, and then we will be in a much better position. But during that period, we need to ensure that social care and adult social care and children's care, social care, doesn't go under to the pressure of the demands on the system. So what I'm saying is we write, welcoming the change, want to participate, but we do need that financial commitment over this period to ensure that we can continue not only to maintain adult and children's social care services, but improve them as well. Thank you.
Is the motion seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor, and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other councillors wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam. First of all, full credit to the Leader and Deputy Leader. It's the second time today that they have questioned their own government. I mean that genuinely. I did say it before this year that they wouldn't do it, and they keep doing it, especially with the WASPy women earlier on tonight. The problem is nothing's going to change, though. And Keith Cunliffe, as passionate as he is, if he was Prime Minister, maybe it would. But our Prime Minister is Keir Starmer. And what he's doing here is nothing more than kicking the can down the road to make a lot of new pledges when it comes to the next general election. And it's funny, we're talking about an independent review. And when Keir Starmer wants an independent review, and then the other times where he doesn't want an independent review. So I don't have any faith in the Conservatives or the Labour Party fixing this problem, but I hope I'm proven wrong. But I give full credit to Keith Cunliffe, who I know is very passionate. One line, Madam Mayor, slightly off topic. I hope the leader can give us the respect of our freedoms today to speak and hopefully take the guillotine off and hopefully let us finish our motions today. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this. And I'd just like to echo a little bit what Councillor Jones just said there and congratulate the leader and the deputy leader for bringing this motion before the council and obviously challenging their own government. And I think, I don't recall Councillor Cunliffe at the last Conference Council scrutiny meeting, but I do believe that the formulas have now changed in how councils get grants from national government to fund adult social care. And we're already seeing, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, your Labour government has already increased the amount we're going to get next year for a further £6.9 million. So I'm happy with that as well. And I think it'll be unanimous. Everyone will be supporting this solid motion that we can all get behind, which will really benefit our residents. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Whittingham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Councillor Halliwell has done a nice job of Tory bashing, as he normally does. I mean, most of his speech is just Tory bashing, Tory bashing, Tory bashing. But what you failed to tell us, how much money did this authority get when Blair and Brown was in government? You know what I mean? It's everybody's fault. It's Boris's fault. It's Jeremy Hunt's fault. I'm surprised you didn't include Rishi Sunak as well. But what I will say is, forget it. Nattering away there. We listen to you. Whenever anybody speaks, you're rabbiting on to somebody else.
Councillor Whittingham, sorry to interrupt. I think it's because you called him Councillor Halliwell.
That doesn't mean... I don't believe you. Right? Councillor Mullinex spoke directly to Councillor Brealey.
Sorry, but his name's Councillor Cunliffe, not Halliwell. I think that's where the confusion was.
Whatever. Doesn't make any difference. The point is, all right, Councillor Cunliffe, if you want to be corrective about it, he blames everybody else, but the thing about this lot is, and what most of you lot will forget, this authority has been in power in Wigan for over 100 years, but it's always somebody else's fault. Never your fault, always somebody else's fault. It's time you took a bit of blame yourselves.
Leader, you've reserved your right to speak. Would you like to speak on the motion now?
I just wondered if I had to introduce myself. But can I just... I'll just pick up one point that Councillor Whittingham said. And that is, when the Tory government took over, they cut the authorities' money by something in the region of 160 million. So let's not forget that. I'm quite happy to take blame if I need to take blame. But let's get this right. It was because of the series of cuts that we had to take place. Every council in the country, during the Tory government's purge on local government, that's affected a lot of the stuff that we still have to battle with and deliver. But can I just say, and it's once was said to me when I was on planning many, many years ago, when we used to go around prior to any old people's accommodation being approved, someone said, make sure you get it right, because one day you'll need it. And that is very clear with adult social care. No matter whether you're sitting in Downing Street or sitting in a council chair, are sitting at home, sometime soon you may need adult social care. So it's most important that we get that right. This is the thing that we have to get right to cure the health service, NHS in general, in terms of waiting times and how we deal with that particular pressure. I have never said that I wouldn't criticise whichever government's in power if I felt it was right to criticise. But what I do know, Madam Mayor, that this is a start that I've got to have some faith in. And there was a statement in Parliament today following a question that we'll start to see changes within a 12-month period. And that's what I hope to see. Sooner this gets sorted, the sooner the better. And I'm more than happy to second the recommendation that this be approved. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cunliffe, I invite you to sum up on your motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I suppose my first reaction was something similar to Councillor Jones's. I just thought this was being kicked into the long grass. But I really am reassured by the fact that the person who was selected to chair this independent commission is Baroness Louise Casey, because she is a formidable individual and a crossbench peer. She's not a Labour Party appointment. She's a crossbench peer. And reports and inquiries that she's been involved in before, she is really quite a, really strong woman. So I am giving the benefit of the doubt that the chair of the commission has been appointed specifically because of her history of being such a fierce fighter and appropriate and wanting to sort situations out. I think the leader was intimating to some of the things Councillor Whittingham said. He said, how much did Blair and Brown take off this council? Well, it wasn't 160 million like we had under the coalition government and the Tory government, and a general view that austerity has not helped us. It's not helped us, it's not helped the country, it's not been beneficial to us. And so it really, he says I'm putting the blame on others. I'm not, but we have to respond to things that we can't influence. I can't influence what any government gives us, really. I have to work with what we have. And I know that from 2011 onwards, I was working with £160 million less than we had. And remember this, if our spend on adult social care is 40% of our spend, £160 million cut on our spend is a big hit. And we've had to reduce other spending in the council, percentage-wise, in order to accommodate the costs. And we see now huge increases, not only in adult social care, but in children's social care, in terms of special educational needs. You know, a real issue for communities to get involved in and sort out, and the government needs to sort it out. And so it's important that this commission really comes up with a solution to how it's going to be funded, how it's going to work, and how it's going to be implemented. And I know that the government, the previous government, were talking about introducing the £85,000 cap on social care costs. No, I was...
Councillor Whittingham. You could look at who you want, it's who you're talking to, and Councillor Cunliffe's talking to me. Councillor Whittingham, I'll ask you to be quiet, thank you.
Thank you for the extension of time, Councillor Whittingham. But the last government was talking about introducing a cap on care costs, so nobody would have to pay care costs of more than £85,000. And I think at the time I said that was grossly unfair to areas like ours. The average price of a house in Wigan is about £169,000–170,000. So if you're a couple living in your £170,000 house and you actually require care in later life, then £85,000 each is the £170,000 gone. If you live in a £600,000 house in Surrey, your £170,000, you've still got quite a bit left, haven't you? So actually, what I would hope is if there is any outcome of this review like that, that it's regionalised in terms of income and wealth and property values. Because otherwise, it's significantly unfair on more deprived areas like us with lower housing costs, and it benefits those in the southeast with huge properties and huge property values. So I really do think something should come of this. But unlike Councillor Jones, I'm optimistic that something beneficial will come out of this, although my initial response did share Councillor Jones's. But I do think that in view of who's been selected to chair it, we will see something significant.
Sorry, Councillor Cullen, if you're out of time. Can I put the motion to the vote? All those in favour, please show your hands. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that motion is carried. Motion number 3, a motion has been submitted by Councillor Raymond, which is set out on page 307 of the agenda. Councillor Raymond.
Thank you for the floor, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, the new year didn't start the way we wanted it to. The early hours of 1st of January saw residents, businesses and livestock in Plattbridge, Bickershaw, Abram, Ashton, Atherley, Lilford Park and other areas in Wigan and Lee devastated by the New Year's Day flooding. And firstly, I want to put my thanks on record for the council staff who went above and beyond in supporting residents. Emergency services for providing timely help and evacuating people to safety. Local businesses for providing sandbags, pumps and skips. Our communities who came together in the face of calamity and for their generous donations. Our community centres and churches, especially St. Nathaniel's in Plattbridge, who opened their doors so people can stay warm and to provide food and drinks. And our volunteers and charities like The Brick, who are still helping residents and businesses with the long-term recovery efforts. Our local councillors of all political colours who kept working with multiple agencies and coordinating the wider response. Madam Mayor, people are understandably angry and concerned about repeated flooding and damage to their homes and businesses, farmlands, and above all, the effect on our collective mental health. We know that many people and businesses are still dealing with the aftermath. For some, this is likely to be an ongoing issue for many months to come. Even after homes have dried out and been refurbished, many will be living under a constant threat of more flooding. And as their representatives, we cannot see these people abandoned. I have personally met families on Bickershaw Lane and Templeton Road in Plattbridge who cannot bring themselves to putting new carpets or buying new furniture in case it happens again. Madam Mayor, these type of flooding incidents have been described as 1 in 100 years events. However, with the impact of climate change escalating, we know flooding is harder to forecast and will become more commonplace. And we've all seen the volatility in global weather extremes increasing by day. Madam Mayor, what's more concerning this year was that this flooding event not only affected the areas with a track record of flooding, but it also hit the new locations across the borough. But Madam Mayor, no longer should the residents be living under a constant threat No longer should the businesses be affected, and no longer should the livelihoods be jeopardised and left exposed to the possibility of frequent flooding. We cannot just go back to business as usual. We've seen the level of pain and suffering of so many of our residents across Wigan and Lee. And I believe our actions, both at a local and national level, must reflect the concerns of our residents and adapt accordingly. Madam Mayor, soon after the flooding, to our utter dismay, we discovered that most of these houses and businesses had none or inadequate insurance in place purely because of the previous flooding incidents. Because of this, Madam Mayor, our residents are facing difficulties in the long-term recovery, and many of them have to restart their lives with very little or no resources at all. They are paying the price for something they are not responsible for and they have no control over. Madam Mayor, we all know that there are things which are out of human control, but there are things that I believe government can intervene in. And ultimately, Madam Mayor, flood alleviation is the responsibility of central government. So I would like to take this opportunity to urge the government to invest in flood defences and preventative measures to cope with unprecedented volumes of rainfall, given the evidence of new volatility in British weather conditions. And I would urge the government to provide funding to the affected residents and businesses with no insurance for their buildings and contents. And I hope that you would all support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is the motion seconded?
Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And of course, I'll be supporting this motion, but not without some criticism of this council. I've been dealing with a flooded area, Madam Mayor, in Wigan, Bryn, for about 5 or 6 years now. Time and time again, every single year, I raise the same issues. We say once in 100 years, it was bad rain. It wasn't once in 100 years. You can look the statistics up. It was, in fact, it was nowhere near. 10 inches our highest in 1955. But, Madam Mayor, unfortunately, to blame this on climate change as a scapegoat and say that government can deal with it by having flood measures in is wrong. I like dealing in facts. Man-made global change, whether you like it or not, isn't necessarily a fact. But what is a fact is that council policy is we clean our grids once every 12 months. In rare occasions, we clean them twice in a year. So before we start saying once in a lifetime, before we start saying global warming's going to destroy the planet, why don't we look at these areas and maintain them? I've actually just come from a meeting regarding, I don't know whether that's allowed cabinet members being advised of civil servants, is it, Madam Mayor? I'm not sure about that. I think that needs looking into. You'll know better than me. So what I will say is, all the measures... Sorry, ma'am.
Councillor Prescott, can I ask you just to not confer with the officers during the meeting, please?
Civil servants are independent to advise us all.
Yeah. I've just
I
taken
like
advice
Paul,
from
so I'm
legal.
going to leave it at that, but that was a bit wrong. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's really neutral of you. So, first of all, let's look at the measures that you're putting in. I'm going to support your motion, but let's first of all look what we can do. And what we can do is maintain. We can look at trying to get some money back to our frontline services, because for too long in this council, what we've seen is our frontline services being cut, whether it's grass cutters, whether it's weeders, whether it's the people who go and clear the grids, it is cut that much. I'll give you an example. Parking services, we only have 4 at a time, and it'll be very similar when it comes to the people who come out and clean the grids. Now, the workers do a fantastic job. Every time we're flooded at Langate and we raise these issues, they come out straight away. But what cost is that having on the taxpayer? Now, I was told today in a meeting by a very nice officer who doesn't have the power to change this, that they would only be able to clean them once every 12 months. The problem then, Madam Mayor, is It's a busy road with lots of cars, a lot of the time parked over the grids, so some of these areas don't actually get cleaned for years. So again, I'll support your motion. It's not global warming what's causing a lot. I can't speak for Platt Bridge as such, but in Bryn, it was not global warming, it was bad maintenance by the council. So officially here, recorded, I'm calling on the council for my residents in Bryn, please will you maintain Langate. We had one lady who's had to move out of her house. In 4 weeks, there's been no work done. That's how it's affecting people now. And let's be honest, Langate was one of those that wasn't actually as bad. But what will happen is if we keep saying, it's this, it's that, there's nothing we can do, we'll never solve the problem. Madam Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Residents of Higher Fold luckily escaped serious flooding on January the 1st. However, Stirling Close was, as usual, up to the curb, with the road itself being impassable. June 2023 saw flooding across the lower part of the estate. This is a problem that residents have been faced with for many years. The residents of Stirling Close are fearful every time we have any heavy rain. With children now petrified something life-threatening will be about to happen. Many residents had floodwater in their homes, and this was compounded by the fact that the sewer manhole cover had blown, resulting in not only surface water but sewage water. This wasn't something residents were aware of, and they were given the option regarding housing for the evening to stay or go. Not knowing the full extent of the issue, many chose to stay in their homes. One particular family had children with additional needs and someone in the early stages of a pregnancy. Staying in the house posed serious health problems for several residents. We were then faced with navigating through the clear-up and different organisations trying to lay blame elsewhere and denying any ownership of the part they may have played in this situation. Eventually, we managed to get the Environment Agency to clear up the brook. This, along with the drains being cleaned by United Utilities and the surface water drains being cleared, have meant that from this heavy bout of rain, they escaped another situation of having to replace carpets and furniture. As mentioned by Councillor Raymond, part of the problem is many residents are unable to get house insurance due to repeated flooding, and they then have to deal with these losses at their own expense. Some only just finishing off paying loans from the last flood that they'd taken out in order to have furnishings. So I fully support the motion, but as part of this motion, can I reassure the residents of Higher Fold that the council will undertake due diligence to ensure surface water drains and gullies are regularly cleared, especially in high-risk areas, not just Higher Fold, but the other areas within the borough, but also keeping pressure on the Environment Agency and United Utilities to play their part in reducing risk. I know we can't mitigate for unprecedented amounts of rainfall, but at least we can do everything that is within our control. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McSteen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this motion. The flooding that struck the Lilford area on New Year's Day has been devastating, affecting over 25 homes, with many additional properties suffering damage to cars, gardens and garages. What should have been a day of fresh starts has instead heralded weeks of anxiety and heartbreak for many residents. This incident also serves as a painful reminder of the Boxing Day floods which occurred 9 years ago and still weighs heavily on Lilford residents. Firstly, I want to express my heartfelt sympathies to everyone impacted. My colleagues and I have been out in the area both on the day and during the following weeks, and we've witnessed firsthand the damage and the distress that it's caused. Families have lost entire floors of their homes, with many incurring uninsured losses in the tens of thousands of pounds. Most painfully, some residents lost irreplaceable keepsakes that held memories of loved ones that are no longer with them. These are more than possessions. The pieces of people's lives, and their loss cannot easily be stated in words here. Amidst the hardship, we did see our community's resilience shine through. Neighbours were supporting one another, and local businesses stepped up to provide assistance too. I'd like to personally thank Tom from Meakin Skip Hire and Billy Andrews Jack from Lee Timber for their tireless efforts. They made a massive difference to many of the worst affected residents. However, there were some disappointments. Spectators in the vehicles ploughed through the flooded areas, causing water to further breach into homes. Most troubling was an incident with someone filming a resident being evacuated, presumably for social media likes, which actually resulted in a delay to an ambulance responding to an emergency. To those who think that sort of behaviour is acceptable in an event like this, let me say this plainly: shame on you. On a more positive note, however, I want to thank the Council and the Environment Agency for their response following the flooding. Staff that were deployed provided support and information to those affected, and the Environment Agency's intent to improve flood defences at the Lilford Park Basin are encouraging. We're looking forward to hearing more about those proposals. I also want to commend our MP, Jo Platt, and her team, whose efforts from the morning of the floods have been vital. Her advocacy also gave Lilford recognition in Parliament and prompted a visit from the Minister for Flooding and her DEFRA colleagues, a really positive step forward for our community. Practical measures are now already well underway. A few hours ago, the first deliveries to a community sandbag store that we're establishing were made. This will have, residents affected are now forming a flood resilience group, and we hope this will have as much impact as the one established already in nearby Higher Folds, which has been very successful in the last recent years in providing mutual support. Despite these efforts, many questions remain for us. We must fully understand the causes of the flooding and assess the response given both on the day and following the floods. Ongoing discussions with residents, the Environment Agency, the council officers and landowners are all going to be crucial to this process. The Section 19 report will also be key to identifying the long-term solutions in due course. In closing, I want to assure residents of the Lilford area that we'll continue to support you, to push for answers and to hold those responsible to account. To be flooded once is devastating, and to be flooded twice in 9 years is completely unacceptable. Our community deserves better, and together we'll ensure your voices are heard and actions are taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I would also like to thank the resilience of our residents and the tireless efforts of our first responders and the council staff. The swift and dedicated response to the recent flooding in both Wigan and Lee was nothing short of heroic. The dedication and commitment in the face of this crisis deserves our gratitude, and I think we've already done that. And our thanks must also extend to the council staff who worked tirelessly throughout the ordeal. However, while I commend the immediate response, we must also acknowledge the systematic failures that contributed to this disaster. And that's what it was, a disaster for the people caught up in it, and the anguish of the communities. The flooding was not an isolated incident or a once-in-100 years event, as Councillor McSteen has just said there. It happened 9 years ago, and it's, I think, on the TV when a resident of Platt Bridge was interviewed. They'd only just recovered from a similar incident 5 years ago. So it's a stark reminder of the inadequacy of our current infrastructure and the shortcomings in our approach to preventive measures. The motion before us rightly acknowledges the suffering of our residents and the extensive damage to property, businesses and livelihoods. However, it fails to address the root causes that sit directly at the heart of the problem. Firstly, we must scrutinise the unchecked development on our greenbelt. The relentless pressure to build on these vital areas without adequate consideration for flood mitigation has demonstrably contributed to the escalating risk of flooding. Many times when we're in planning committees, we bring up the question of flooding and we get told by the officers it's not a problem. But only things, it might be a little risk. But very little risk all added together becomes a big risk, and that's what we've got here. This inappropriate and unchecked development must cease, and a review of our development policies, including the implications of building on Greenbelt land, is an absolute necessity. I mean, we've got Morsley Common, where Mortal Lane floods like with just a drop of rain. God knows what it'll be like when we build on there. Secondly, we must call out the concerning lack of investment in the new drainage infrastructure. We cannot continue to rely on reactive measures like simply cleaning out gullies. This reactive approach is simply not sustainable. Instead, we must urgently invest in proactive measures and modern drainage systems. These systems are desperately needed to adapt to the changing climate and the increasing frequency of extreme weather events to ensure our infrastructure fits for purpose. And what I mean by that is that we're getting all these new developments on Greenbelt land, having their own drainage system in, but they're clagging into old Victorian systems what cannot cope with this, the extra water going down there, what was usually soaked up by the Greenbelt. The repeated failures of United Utilities to maintain and clean our sewers. You know, we may do our bit, clean out a gully, but it's not just about cleaning out the gully, it's about cleaning out the lines to the main sewer from them gullies, that they're all operating 100%. And then United Utilities, or whoever's responsible for that estate, is cleaning the main sewer. So there's no silt build-up in it. So they're operating at least above 80% all year round. And I have a little bit of insight into this. I did work in the field at one time. Well, not literally in the field. Repeating myself. It's their blatant failure to do this compounded their issues, only exacerbated the flooding. The reactive approach, which only often engages with events in their wake, isn't good enough. We demand, well, I demand, a proactive approach to ensuring the efficient and ongoing maintenance of our drainage systems. The flooding wasn't just an act of God or only blamed on global warming. It's a consequence of a failure to plan for the future. We need a comprehensive review of our infrastructure, development policies and our approach to preventive maintenance. We must adopt a proactive approach on the basis of evidence and sound management, not on reactive measures in the aftermath. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gerard. Councillor Martin Smethurst.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to speak in support of this motion, not just as an elected representative, but as someone who was on the ground in New Year's Day's floods, working alongside our emergency services to rescue survivors and support families. What I witnessed that day will stay with me forever. Families were wading through waist-deep water, carrying whatever they could salvage, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. Some had to leave their homes with nothing but the clothes on their backs, unsure of what they would return to. For many, it wasn't the first time they'd faced such devastation, and the emotional toll was heartbreaking. I want to take this opportunity to extend my heartfelt thanks to the emergency services, council officers and community volunteers who work tirelessly, often in treacherous conditions, to ensure that everybody was brought to safety. Their bravery and dedication saved lives, and I am incredibly proud of all of their efforts. But as this motion rightly states, we cannot continue to rely solely on the heroic actions of individuals. We need systemic change, investment in flood defences, better planning, and comprehensive support for those who are repeatedly affected. We must also address the glaring issue of inadequate insurance coverage, which leaves many residents and businesses unable to fully recover from these events. I urge the relevant authorities and the government to act decisively and ensure that communities like ours are no longer left vulnerable to these increasingly frequent disasters. Together, we must build a future where no one has to endure the heartache and loss that so many experienced on New Year's Day. Thank you.
Members, unfortunately, we've now reached the guillotine for the meeting, and as such, and as per Rule 4.2 of the Rules of Procedure, we'll now have to move straight to the vote on this motion. So, can I have a show of hands, all those accepting the motion as set out in the report, please? All those against? Anyone abstaining? Councillor O'Byrne. Councillor O'Byrne. Councillor O'Byrne, Councillor Jones, to answer your question, anyone can vote to suspend, but we've passed the guillotine, so you can't do that now, I'm afraid. Yes, so I'm sorry. I'm adjourning the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Please leave the chamber. Good morning, everyone. I'll just run through some housekeeping prior to today's business. We're not expecting a fire drill, therefore, if the alarm sounds, please can you follow officers who will lead you to the nearest fire exit, where we'll gather at the assembly point on Believe Square. Others will assist members of the public gallery who are up there, members of the public. Can I remind members of the need to respect each other, and I will continue to chair these meetings fairly and show impartiality. Members of the public are welcome, but should be aware that they should not interrupt or disrupt the proceedings. Disruption may result in removal from the public gallery or an adjournment of the meeting in accordance with Rules 18 and 19 of the Council's Rules and Procedure of the Constitution. As the meeting was adjourned on Wednesday, in accordance with Rule 18, due to the disturbance, this meeting, in accordance with Rule 18, has been reconvened. This, therefore, is a continuance of the meeting on Wednesday. We're here today solely to complete the outstanding business of the meeting on Wednesday, which is to vote on motions 4 and 5. According to the rules of procedure contained in the Constitution, speeches are not permissible. Do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have apologies from Councillor Anderton, Councillor Brown, Councillor Brearley, Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Cunliffe, Councillor Churton, Councillor Crosby, Councillor Galligan, Councillor Gregory, Councillor Hodgkinson, Councillor Hunt, Councillor Hurst, Councillor Jones, Councillor Lloyd, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor C. Morgan, Councillor M. Morgan, Councillor Nicholson, Councillor Reedy, Councillor M. Smethurst, Councillor Walker. Do we have any further apologies, members? Councillor Prescott? Thank you, Councillor Prescott. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Motion number 4. A motion has been submitted by Councillor O'Byrne, which is set out on page 308 of the agenda. In accordance with the rules of... Sorry, Councillor Watson.
Madam Mayor, can I submit a motion without notice under Rule 10K to suspend a particular council procedure, and in this case, Rule 4.3, that doesn't allow speeches to be allowed in the usual way? Now, we understand we're in uncharted territory here, but I think these motions, both of them, need to be debated in this council chamber and need to be carried out in the correct procedure. And if it's not allowed under this motion without notice 10K rule, could you please explain why, whether right immediately or at a later date? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. I'll defer to legal. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Apparently it's a valid motion, so if you're proposing that, I need someone to second it. Thank you, Councillor Gerard, and we need to put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? The motion's lost. Thank you. So we'll carry on in accordance with the Rules of Procedure 4.3. Any business of the meeting that has not been concluded within 3 hours of the commencement of the meeting will be deemed as being formally moved and seconded, and we will move straight to the vote. Can I put the motion to the vote, please? Can you show your hands for all those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Motion number 5. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Fletcher, which is set out on page 308 of the agenda. In accordance with the Rules of Procedure 4.3, any business of the meeting that has not been concluded within 3 hours of the commencement of the meeting will be deemed as being formally moved and seconded, and we will move straight to the vote. Can I put the motion to the vote, please? All those in favour, please show your hands. Thank you. All those against? Any abstentions? So that motion is carried, and I'd just like to confirm that both motions 4 and 5 have both been agreed and carried, so that concludes the business for today's meetings. Thank you. Have a safe journey home.